Much is happening in Sudan. A lot of attention is focused on countries like Ukraine and the Middle East, Gaza in particular, but so much more trauma, drama is playing out in Sudan right now, and he's going to be explaining that to me a little bit later on. But this hour, the dispute over the final resting place of Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu may finally be settled today in a South African court. And also in Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama has appointed Finance Minister Cassiel Ato-Forsan as the acting Minister of Defense. This, of course, after that tragic loss in a military plane of several cabinet ministers. So that's what's coming up on the program. But first, let's catch you up with the news with Norotando Butelezi and also the sports headlines with Figile Lingwati. Good morning.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has asked Finance Minister Cassiel Ato-Forsan to also act as Defense Minister after a military helicopter crash in which the Defense Minister was among those killed. The helicopter was flying with 5 officials, including Defense Minister Edward Omane Boama and Environment, Science and Technology Minister Ibrahim Mudala Mohammed, and 3 Air Force crew on board when it crashed. None survived, and Ghanaian authorities did not immediately give an explanation for what might have caused the crash. Sudan is accusing the United Arab Emirates of sending foreign fighters to back the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces in the Darfur region against the Sudanese armed forces. Abu Dhabi has denied these claims while Colombia has not issued a statement yet. Naba Mohedin reports from Sudan.
It's not the first time that Sudan is accusing United Arab Emirates of backing and fueling the fighting in Sudan. UAE has always denied all of the accusations, despite that Sudan has filed an official complaint in United Nations Security Council. Some U.S. diplomats and UN experts verified that Colombian mercenaries contributed in the fighting and are training RSF. Some allied groups, Darfur allied groups, confirmed that at least 80 Colombian mercenaries were seen in and around Al-Fashir and are training RSF to use drone and artillery and are fighting with them. Colombia has officially apologized to the Sudanese government.
South Africa's minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, has welcomed the progress made so far in preparation for the upcoming G20 meeting to be held in South Africa later this year. Ntshavheni says that approximately 80 of the 132 planned official meetings on the G20 calendar have already taken place. She says that the negotiations of the ministerial outcome documents and related high-level outcomes have begun. Ntshavheni was addressing the media on cabinet meeting outcomes.
South Africa has introduced the cost of capital review, which is a critical step toward creating a fairer global financial system that enables developing countries to invest in infrastructure, healthcare, education, and climate resilience. All the recognized G20 engagement groups have presented their work programs and priorities. The US has indicated their return to full participation in the G20 meetings, albeit at a level of undersecretary. The following meetings took place in July: the 4th G20 Finance and Central Bank Deputies Meeting, Pandemic Response Financing Stimulation Exercise, and update on the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable.
Furthermore, South Africa's minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, says Cabinet has welcomed the appointment of Madlanga Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference and Corruption within the criminal justice system. Ntshavheni also confirmed that the terms of reference for the commission have been officially gazetted. The commission was established following explosive allegations by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. He claimed that Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, along with several senior police officials, have close ties to criminal syndicates. Ntshavheni was briefing the media on the outcomes of cabinet meetings held from July through to the 6th of August.
The establishment of the commission affirms the President's commitment to use constitutional processes to thoroughly investigate allegations of wrongdoing, uphold the integrity of our institutions, build public trust, and hold anyone who transgresses our nation's laws accountable.
The Kremlin says that President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin will meet in the coming days to discuss the war in Ukraine. Trump's deadline for Russia to agree to a ceasefire or face more sweeping sanctions is due to expire today. The BBC's Vitaly Shevchenko has the details.
Well, it's significant in the sense that they haven't sat down and discussed this full-scale invasion before. But we have to remember that this is what Vladimir Putin really wants. Without making any concessions or promises, he has secured a meeting with Donald Trump, apparently. That would make him look like he's equal to the world's movers and shakers. He is back on the global political arena.
For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Buthelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our headlines, we begin that Proteas women top order Beda Anneke Bosch is back in the training ahead of the World Cup. And the world number one tennis player Jannik Sinner is happy to have time off after the Wimbledon victory. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
A happy Friday, a happy Women's Day on this 8th of August, 2025. So after the news every day on Rise and Shine, we give you a concise roundup of some stories you may have missed. That's by our journalists who've compiled these stories, researchers and editors, to make sure that you get into the know in terms of what's happening in and around our continent. And also it's a way of throwing forward to what we can expect to develop in the news in the new day. So today we start with Zambia, where the stalemate over the final resting place of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu is expected to be resolved today as the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria prepares to deliver its judgment on the matter. Juliet Newell reports.
The Zambian government turned to the High Court seeking declaratory relief, which would entitle the Zambian government the right to repatriate the body of the late former president to Zambia for the purposes of a state funeral and burial thereafter in Embassy Park, Lusaka, Zambia. The late former President Lungu's burial, which was set to take place in June this year, was interdicted by agreement between parties, pending the final determination of the issue. The Zambian government argued that while former President Lungu's benefits were suspended when he became engaged in active politics, that impediment fell away upon his passing. And as a result, Lungu became entitled to a state funeral, and the Zambian government acquired the right to accord him such. Judgments expected at around 11:30 a.m.
In Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama has appointed Finance Minister Cassiel Atto-Forsan as acting Defense Minister, and this follows the tragic death of Defense Minister Edward Omane Buama in a helicopter crash. The aircraft, which was en route to Obuasi, was carrying 5 government officials, including Environment Minister Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed.
I have the unpleasant duty, sadly, to announce a national tragedy.
Julius Debra, Chief of Staff to the Ghanaian President John Mahama, spoke to reporters after the crash. Authorities did not immediately explain the cause of the crash. Earlier, Ghana's military reported that he had lost radar contact with the Air Force helicopter. Buama became Defense Minister in January after President Mahama returned to power. His replacement will take on a complex security file that includes both external and internal challenges. Like other coastal West African nations, Ghana faces threats from Sahel-based Islamist groups, expanding south from Burkina Faso and Mali, where they often launch deadly attacks.
Sierra Leone's ambassador to the United Nations has spoken on behalf of West African states, calling for stronger regional leadership and international cooperation to tackle terrorism. Ambassador Michael Imran Kanu made the joint statement at a Security Council media briefing, highlighting the ongoing threat and the need for coordinated action.
West Africa and the Sahel region currently faces the scourge of international terrorism, with the Central Sahel emerging as the global epicenter, accounting for over half of all terrorism-related deaths in 2024, and with risk of its spread to coastal states. Terrorist groups including Jamaat, Nusrat al-Islam, Wali Muslimi, Jenin, the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, and affiliates of ISIL, Daesh, and Al-Qaeda continue to perpetrate attacks with increased intensity and sophistication. We strongly condemn all acts of terrorism and express grave concern over the use of unmanned aerial systems, anti-aircraft capabilities, and improvised explosive devices to target civilians and civilian infrastructure.
And finally, in Zimbabwe, a group of young climate activists have taken action in the capital Harare by planting trees. Led by environmentalist Tafadzwa Gwinyi, the initiative raises awareness about climate challenges in low-income communities. Vanessa Chan reports.
The project is run by 35-year-old Tafadzwa Gwinyi in the high-density Kawadzana township.
Where I come from, high-density suburb, it felt like you are too much heat, like you are in an oven. When you go to the northern suburbs, all of a sudden the environment has changed. It's cool. It's it's just beautiful to be in. And I realized that the major difference was in the tree density.
It's not the first time Gwinyi has hosted a tree planting event in his neighborhood. He has led similar initiatives over the past few years.
We have planted over 7,500 trees since 2020, so that's 5 years of planting. We plant almost every month.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup. We'll have more for you tomorrow. No, in fact, on Monday. It's Friday. I keep forgetting. Coming up shortly, we'll be taking a look at a conversation that I had regarding a very important convention on gender-based violence across the continent.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
C'est notre invitée du jour, la belle Aïna Mwenze. Elle est là, certaines l'appellent Boss Lady.
Bonjour Monsieur Gelino.
Parlez-nous un tout petit peu de vous.
Je m'appelle Boss Lady Aïna. Je mets l'accent sur le nom de Boss Lady parce que je mérite cela après le travail fait. Et c'est une rémunération en titre de la personne que je suis devenue aujourd'hui. Épouse et une mère de 4 garçons. Et voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant.
Et vous vous êtes lancé dans le business, comment c'est venu?
En tant que mère et se retrouvant dans les pays étrangers, particulièrement en Afrique du Sud, je me disais que laisser les enfants sur la charge des travailleurs ou d'une bonne, ça serait pas très intéressant. Je me suis dit, bon, je dois essayer de m'organiser et trouver un emploi que je peux faire.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126 and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. New day, new stories. Start your morning. morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa. 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. 7 till 9 a.m. East African Time. 9 till 10 a.m. Pacific Time. 6 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 7 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 6 till 9 a.m. Nigeria. 5 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 4 till 9 a.m. Nigeria. 3 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 2 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 1 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 2 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 1 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 2 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 1 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 2 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 1 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 2 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 1 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 2 till 9 a.m. Ghana. 1 till 9 a.m. Ghana
Most families in Gaza are living in severely overcrowded, unsafe and undignified conditions, some with no shelter at all. That's the word from the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs that further lamented the fact that no shelter materials have entered Gaza since March the 2nd, more than 5 months ago. They have also pointed out that starvation and malnutrition, especially among children in the enclave, continue to deepen as NGO partners warned that malnutrition among children has reached the highest level on record. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
Nearly 12,000 children under 5 years of age in Gaza were identified to be suffering from acute malnutrition in July, the highest monthly figure recorded to date by the nutrition cluster. While the World Health Organization has confirmed at least 99 deaths due to malnutrition, including 64 adults and 35 children since the start of the year. Listen to UN spokesperson Farhan Haq.
Our partners working in nutrition report that acute malnutrition among children in Gaza has reached the highest levels recorded to date. In July alone, nearly 12,000 children aged 6 to 59 months were identified as acutely malnourished out of 136,000 screened. Of these, over 2,500 children suffer from severe acute malnutrition, the most life-threatening form. 40 children required hospitalization in stabilization centers. The proportion of children with severe acute malnutrition is rising. In June and July, 18% of all acutely malnourished children had severe acute malnutrition, compared with 12% between March and May. Humanitarian access constraints are adding to the malnutrition crisis.
They warn that the overall volume of nutrition supplies entering Gaza remained far below what was needed to prevent a further deterioration of the situation, while shelter for Gaza's population of 2 million remained a major concern, given the breadth of the enclave's destruction and devastation after almost 2 years of war.
More than 1 million shelter items and 2.3 million items such as tents, tarps, and sealing-off materials have been procured and are currently stranded in Jordan and Egypt, as Israeli authorities have not approved their entry. No shelter materials have entered Gaza since the 2nd of March, despite the immense needs. Existing stocks are fully depleted, and the shelter crisis continues to worsen. Most families in Gaza are living in severely overcrowded, unsafe, and undignified conditions, some with no shelter at all. An assessment in July of 44 displacement sites in Gaza City found that 43 sites, almost all, had families with no shelter. 11% of more than 6,500 surveyed households reported to be living out in the open. The shelter situation is also further deteriorating due to ongoing bombardment, displacement orders, and insecurity, which continue to displace families and disrupt humanitarian operations.
Venting concern here, Huck indicated that despite some access improvements, aid that has entered Gaza remained by far insufficient, while UN convoys continued to face impediments on their way to delivering aid.
While fewer humanitarian movements have been denied outright, missions that are approved still take hours to complete. As we mentioned here, some of the missions have taken more than 18 hours to be completed, and teams have been compelled to wait on roads that are often dangerous, congested, or impassable. Yesterday, 5 out of 11 missions requiring coordination with Israeli authorities were facilitated. These included the collection of food from Kerem Shalom and Zikim crossings. Another 4 missions were impeded, but were eventually fully accomplished. These included collection of fuel from Kerem Shalom crossing and transfer of fuel from southern to northern Gaza. While limited quantities of fuel have been entering Gaza over the past week, fuel supplies remain critically limited and unpredictable, significantly undermining the ability of humanitarian partners to deliver and sustain life-saving services.
Israel has indicated that it would allow gradual and controlled entry of goods into Gaza, including supplies brought in through the private sector, and pauses in fighting, airdrops, and protecting routes for aid convoys. But the end of the war remained out of sight amid failed ceasefire talks, as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed their intention to take control of all of Gaza in an effort to assure Israel's security, remove Hamas from power, and hand it over to a civilian government supported by Arab forces that does not include the militant group. moves to control Gaza, even temporarily, would fly in the face of an advisory opinion by the International Court of Justice last year that Israel's occupation of the Gaza Strip and West Bank, including East Jerusalem, was unlawful and needed to end. I'm Sherwin Rice-Pease in New York.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Now, if ever the world needed to agree on stopping plastic pollution, it's now. And this is the word from supporters of a deal. According to the UN Environment Programme, UNEP, plastic production and waste is due to triple by 2060. In Geneva, where international talks have been underway this week for a legally binding deal to stop plastic pollution, campaigners are also having their say. They include Sheila Saling from California, who's the interim chair of the Youth Plastic Action Network. And she spoke to Daniel Johnson of UN News.
And it's lovely to see you at the UN today. The sun is shining and you've brought your colleagues, your volunteers, your friends from the NGO while the plastic talks are happening. What's your key message to those gathering here? It is a massive meeting, 170 odd countries or so.
It is a massive meeting and we are representing the youth front. You know, youth need a treaty that has plastic production cuts and, really reduction starting at the full life cycle, starting from extraction all the way to the end of life, because this treaty is critical for us and future generations.
What is it about plastics in particular that you don't like?
Plastic affects everything from climate change to health to fertility to even birth defects. It affects physical disabilities as well as invisible disabilities. People don't realize how much it actually impacts, and every single day we are impacted by plastic, and without production cuts, it could get significantly worse.
I think the UN Environment Programme has forecast that there will be a tripling of plastics between now and 2060 unless we come to an agreement. So obviously we need it to happen quickly, but we need to know what alternatives there are. How are we going to get that kind of knowledge out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a big thing is education and capacity building, but also financing as well. It's no secret that we don't have all the answers right now to really how we're going to replace the single-use plastic and plastic that we are potentially going to eliminate, which is why it's critical for, to financing innovation as well. And the youth voice is as important, if not more important than ever, in creating this path forward.
Last question to you then. Please tell us a bit more about your organisation. You've got a bunch of youth here today and it's great to see some young people at the UN, and you've been unfurling a wonderful banner made of plastics, perhaps?
So as I mentioned, I'm the interim chair of the Youth Plastic Action Network, which is a youth constituency. It's kind of a fancy way of saying a coalition per se, but it's more than that. There's many different youth constituencies across many different processes. This is formed through the Children and Youth Major Group to UNEP, which is the official youth mechanism for the UNEP program. But we decided, along with several other organizations, that it's best to create its own dedicated youth constituency for this process because plastic is such a big topic. So today we are here also with the International Secretariat for Water and the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, and we are celebrating the launch of the Youth Plastic Action Network. The plastic actually comes from rivers of Bali, where a lot of the waste is dumped from the global north. And it simply has been all over the world. It's been to COP29, it's been to the beaches of Bali, as we are water, and it's also now here in the Palais des Nations at the United Nations in Geneva.
One thing, I think I was reading the preamble to the agreement that member states are thinking about signing in the next 10 days or so, and I don't think they're going to allow other countries to shift their waste to other places. So hopefully that's one good thing that might come out of this agreement.
Hopefully that would be a great win. I think we need an as ambitious treaty as possible, but even that, I think there's still a bigger discussion and more education to have about the waste trade. A lot of people from the global north don't know that their waste is even exported to these countries and to places where they can barely handle their own waste as it is.
Thank you so much for coming to see us, and I hope that you feel that your voice is being heard.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a challenging process for youth, and we've had an uphill battle, but I definitely think that there's, in particular, different, especially some groups like the European Union and AOSIS, and as well as GRULAC, that are very much attentive and made sure the youth voices are heard, and the High Ambition Coalition as well.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke to U.S. President Donald Trump in a phone call on Wednesday in a last-minute attempt to resolve the trade dispute which affects the agricultural and automotive sectors of South Africa. With thousands of jobs on the line, South Africa is ramping up efforts to shield jobs and its economy as the United States prepares to impose 30% tariffs on key South African exports. Dimagazo Lishoro has the details.
Government's efforts remain focused on growing the economy to save and create new jobs, which include intensifying diversification efforts and strengthening our global supply chain integration.
That was Minister in the Presidency Khumbudzo Ntshavheni addressing the media in Pretoria on Thursday following a cabinet meeting. She confirmed that President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke to U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday in a last-minute ditch to resolve the trade impasse which affects the agricultural and automotive sectors the most. The tariffs are expected to take effect this week and could impact over 30,000 jobs if no agreement is reached. Ntshavheni says communication lines with the U.S. remain open.
The principle is that the room for engagement is there and the president continues to engage. And you'll recall that in May he led the delegation to Washington to open that room for negotiation. And it's from that meeting, the working visit, that there was an assurance that as soon as we reach a deal, then there will be a review of the tariffs.
Government has approved a package of short and long-term interventions, including the launch of an export support desk, a localization support fund, and the Export and Competitiveness Support Program, which will offer financial relief to affected industries.
A localization support fund for affected companies to contribute to the national effort, and the Export and Competitiveness Support Program, which will include a working capital facility and plant and equipment facility to address short to medium-term needs across all industries.
A block exemption has also been introduced, allowing competitors in the export sector to coordinate their efforts without violating competition laws. A draft exemption will be published by the end of this week. Ntshavheni added that Trade Minister Pax Tau and Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen will provide a full update on the negotiations this coming week.
As the country works to expand its export markets to Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and across the African continent to enhance our economic resilience. Specific to industries impacted by the tariff increase, and the ministers of Trade and Industry and Competition and Agriculture will brief on the details of these measures specific to the tariffs arrangement by next week, Monday.
Meanwhile, government is pushing ahead with a 5-year trade and investment package with China, focusing on industrial development, digital technology, and expanded market access. For now, all eyes are on Washington and Monday's expected briefing as South Africa races against the clock to protect its economy and export industries. For Channel Africa News in Pretoria, I'm Dimagazo Lishoro.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And that brings us to our news headlines time. Let's say good morning to Nolutando Buthelezi with that.
SABC News. Headlines. The African perspective.
Officials in Ghana have launched an investigation into a military helicopter crash that killed the country's defense and environment ministers, as well as 6 others. Sudan is accusing the United Arab Emirates of sending foreign fighters to back the paramilitary rapid support forces in Darfur region against the Sudanese armed forces. And the U.S. has doubled its reward for information leading to the arrest of the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro to $50 million. I'll have the details at the top of the hour.
Ndathokoza kwambiri madaphiri ayi omvera athu tiyambe ndi nkhani.
In our sports this hour, we begin with cricket news. The Proteas women's coach Mandla Mashimbi has confirmed that top order batter Anneke Bosch is back in training and on track for the return ahead of the ICC Women's World Cup. Bosch missed the recent tour to Sri Lanka and Caribbean due to illness, but Mashimbi says she is now focused on rebuilding her physical strength in preparation for South Africa's final series before the global showpiece.
As for Anneke, I've been really happy with the progress. She's practicing fully at the moment. Now it's just putting in the work and the time and loading up, so that by the time we get to that big camp before we go to Pakistan, she's where she needs to be. So far, so good. So I'm really happy to have her back in the fold, really.
As far as the starting 11 is concerned, Mashimbi has not yet made up his mind about how to set his team up. They'll also have warm-up matches against New Zealand and India. A team to get the right side and the right time before facing England women in their first match on the 3rd of October.
We're still fine-tuning, to be honest. We're still fine-tuning the combinations and kind of like try and find out which personnel or which players are going to be impactful for us where, in terms of our batting lineup and bowling lineup, and conditions obviously dictating as to how we choose our teams as well.
And now on to fighting. That comes that Chimaev has credited US President Donald Trump after he secured a visa which allows him to fight in America for the first time in nearly 3 years. Russian Chimaev's past 2 fights took place in Abu Dhabi, with the 31-year-old previously denying that travel issues prevented him from fighting in the US. Chimaev has ties to Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov, who is sanctioned by the US over alleged human rights abuses, including repression, torture, and murder. He returns to the US for the first time since 2022 when he faces South Africa's Dricus du Plessis for the middleweight title at the UFC 319 in Chicago on the 16th of August. Now, tennis news. Emma Raducanu says she's excited to be working with Rafael Nadal's former coach, Francis Roig, as she prepares for this year's US Open. The 22-year-old had been working with British coach Mark Pecci on an informal basis since March and has now added Spaniard Roig to her team full-time. Roig worked alongside Nadal's uncle Tony from 2005 to 2022 and was part of all 22 of the Spaniard's Grand Slam victories. The British number one is playing in the Cincinnati Open for the first time since 2022 this week and will face either fellow Brighton Katie Boulter or Serb Olga Danilovic in her opening match after receiving a first-round bye. Let me end with more tennis. World number one Jannik Sinner says he has taken the right decision by opting for a long break following his Wimbledon triumph, and the recharged Italian is ready to fire at the Cincinnati Open, where he will defend his title. The 23-year-old lost a Marathon French Open final to rival Carlos Alcaraz in June before gaining revenge over the Spaniard at the All England Club last month to secure his 4th Grand Slam title overall and a second of a difficult season in which he served a short ban for an inadvertent doping offense. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Right, it's time now to catch you up with the world of business. And at the business desk this morning is Tabiso Luhuko. Good morning, Tabiso.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. The South African Cabinet has approved various short to long-term measures to ensure that the production capacity in sectors affected by the U.S. tariffs is maintained and save an estimated 30,000 jobs. The 30% tariff slapped on the agriculture and automotive sectors, amongst others, by the U.S. are scheduled to come into effect today. Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, briefed the media in Pretoria, outlining the various interventions which include the establishment of an export support desk to assist affected companies absorb the tariffs and facilitate resilience and growth strategies.
A localization support fund for affected companies to contribute to the national effort, and the export and competitiveness support program, which will include a working capital facility and plant and equipment facility to address short to medium-term needs across all industries.
India has unexpectedly become a key target in Washington's latest push to pressure Russia over the Ukraine war. On Wednesday, Donald Trump, the president of the U.S., doubled the tariffs on India to 50%, up from 25%, penalizing Delhi for purchasing Russian oil, a move India called unfair and unjustified. The tariffs aim to cut Russia's oil revenues and force Putin into a ceasefire. The new rate will come into effect in 21 days. This makes India the most heavily taxed U.S. trading partner in Asia and places it alongside Brazil, another nation facing steep U.S. tariffs amid tense relationships. The BBC's Davina Gupta has more.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he won't compromise the interests of India's farming and fishing industries, which it has protected against genetically modified U.S. foods. That's key sticking point in trade talks between the two. But Washington has also accused Delhi of helping fund the war in Ukraine by importing oil from Russia.
The South African Minister of Small Business Development, Stella Ndabeni, says her department is implementing measures aimed at reducing red tape impeding cooperatives. Ndabeni was addressing stakeholders at the International Cooperative Day celebrations in Sun City in the Northwest Province. The two-day event is a global initiative recognized by the United Nations to highlight the crucial role of cooperatives in advancing sustainable development, economic inclusion and social equity. Ndabeni says legislative changes are needed. Zambia has denied that an acid spill in its copper mining region 6 months ago still posed a serious health risk a day after the U.S. Embassy restricted travel to the area for U.S. officials citing widespread contamination. The spill occurred in February when a tailings dam failed at a Chinese-run copper processing plant, spewing 50,000 cubic meters of acidic slurry into nearby rivers. Chandugulu Geke on this report.
The Southern African country's government has sought to clean up affected areas losing lime to lower acidity levels and said there was no need for alarm. The Zambian government spokesperson Cornelius Mwetwa told a press conference that laboratory results show that the acidity levels have returned to normal and concentrations of heavy metals are steadily decreasing, which means that the immediate danger to human, animal and plant life has been averted.
The Angolan government says that the country got back $200 million of collateral in May that it had to post to JP Morgan earlier this year after the price of his bond rebounded, easing pressure on its finances. JP Morgan and Angola agreed in December a $1 billion one-year derivative contract known as a total return swap backed by $1.9 billion in its government dollar bonds. In early April, JP Morgan demanded extra security from the Southern African crude oil exporter after a sharp oil price decline in the wake of tariff turmoil hit the value of Angolan bonds provided as collateral. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,527 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.39. Kenya, 128 shillings 6. In Zambia, 23.57. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5.45. In Russia, it's at 79 rubles 45. India, 87 rupees 56. China, 71.18. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 73 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities markets: gold $3,388 and platinum $1,342 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $66.34 a barrel. For any business stories that you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
It's time for our G20 fact of the day. Did you know that the G20 consists of two parallel tracks, which are the Sherpa and Finance track? The Sherpa track consists of working groups that are focused on socio-economic issues such as agriculture, anti-corruption, climate, digital economy, education, employment, energy, environment, health, tourism, trade and investment, whilst the finance track, well, that's headed by finance ministers and central bank governors, and that relates to fiscal and monetary policy issues such as the global economy, infrastructure, financial regulation, inclusion, IFA and taxation. And that is our G20 fact for the day.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sports, brings you Chasing the Sun.
Let me pick that up, actually. South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, and that's a powerful 5-part documentary series about South Africa's national rugby team, the Springboks. And this tells the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. It started on the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. And you can still tune in every Sunday for all the highs, the lows, the heartache and the heroics that made rugby history. You can stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, and guess what? No subscription is required. So don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Right, let's
Sudan is accusing the United Arab Emirates of sending foreign fighters to back the paramilitary rapid support forces in Darfur region against the Sudanese armed forces. Abu Dhabi has denied these claims, while Colombia has not issued a statement yet. Naba Mohideen reports from Sudan.
Sudan has accused the United Arab Emirates of backing the RSF and sending Colombian mercenaries to fight on its behalf in Darfur region, especially around Al-Fashir, which is the capital of North Darfur and the last stronghold for the army and allied groups. Al-Fashir has been under besieged since May 2024 as the RSF is trying to control it because it's the last capital that is not under control of the RSF in Darfur region. Fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces triggered on April 2023 and killed tens of thousands of people and displaced over 12 million and created the world's worst and largest scale humanitarian crisis. It's not the first time that Sudan is accusing United Arab Emirates of backing and fueling the fighting in Sudan. UAE has always denied all of the accusations, despite that Sudan has filed an official complaint in the United Nations Security Council. Some U.S. diplomats and UN experts verified that Colombian mercenaries contributed in the fighting and are training RSF. Some allied groups, Darfur allied groups, confirmed that at least 80 Colombian mercenaries were seen in and around Al-Fashir and are training RSF to use drone and artillery and are fighting with them. Colombia has officially apologized to the Sudanese government in December because of some of its citizens participated in the brutal fighting in Sudan. This is according to the Sudanese government last year. It's not the first time that UAE is accused by the Sudanese government, but of course the two countries are escalating, diplomatically escalating, and Sudan has previously announced that it has boycotted UAE, but fighting continues in Sudan and impacting hundreds of thousands of people, especially in Al-Fashir, which is now under besieged by the RSF and is suffering from acute famine that is killing people every day there. Naba Muhiddin, Port Sudan is Sudan.
And we'll have more extensive coverage on the story as Peter brings you more on that topic, and that will be after 8 o'clock. So stay tuned for that here on Rise and Shine.
Meanwhile, women from all around the African continent gathered for the Pan-African Transformational Leadership Summit in South Africa's Eastern Cape. And topics there covered included entrepreneurship, transforming the public and private sector, supply chain management, and financial services for women and youth. Now, the summit was a partnership between the non-governmental organization Africa for Africa and the Provincial Department for Social Development. Sisi Sahalo was there and filed this report.
Women gathered together with one voice of empowering one another. They came from various sectors which include government, non-governmental organizations, the private sector, and many more. The member of the Executive Council, MEC of Social Development in the Eastern Cape Province of South Africa, Bukwe Fanta, hailed the summit as being important for the advancement of African women.
Networking is a key when we start anything. Women in other countries have got the same problems and how they tackle it and move forward. So what we have got that Eastern Cape women together with women from other countries to share. We've got women from Egypt, we've got women from Madagascar. They are sharing their own experiences and they've moved. And we're saying even our women, they must copy and move forward.
Mariam Lesian, who's the president of Pan-Africa Tourism Board, was representing the African continent. Her organization's aim is to promote and complement the tourism sector in Africa and to create sustainable tourism. She says they collaborate with all the countries, with tourism boards, authorities, ministries, and even tourism stakeholders. Her topic was on opportunities in the tourism and hospitality industry.
I've always been insisting that the African women, they're working so hard, doing beautiful art crafts, doing beautiful handcrafts, talking of the beads, and very colorful and very beautiful. I can insist on that. But the value of the money which they get, it's really nothing. It's, to me, I say it's nothing. They're not getting anything based on the work which they're putting into what they're doing. So what I really want to encourage and to tell my fellow women in this forum, that we have to stand up, we have to wake up. The African women, the ordinary African women, have to be taught how to do things. We're not going to touch how they do it in the beauty, how they do their art craft and everything. We're going to polish what they're doing so that it can be more valuable and can compete in the world market. And another thing which we're going to do, we're going to create opportunity for them to sell their products in one of the Pan-Africa Tourism Board platform so that they can get the money or the value which it's supposed to be.
Another organization which was represented in the summit is She Millionaire. It is run by Dr. Mendis Kauge. She expressed that her organization advocates for women to be financially independent, and they also have an academy which is empowering women, especially from rural backgrounds. She believes the barriers of women accessing finance is lack of knowledge by women and lenders not willing to risk with women. She expresses why the summit is crucial.
This summit is very significant to us as we are looking into ways that we can assist these women in procuring and securing finances so that they can start their business. Because once we empower them, they now need to go and execute what we empowered them with. But without finances, they're not in a position to do so.
Egypt was represented by Dr. Nevin Nakhla, the founder and chief executive officer of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA trading company in Egypt. Her company's mandate is to facilitate and aggregate intra-Africa trading for small, medium and micro enterprises, even large companies. Her role in the summit was to talk about the AFCFTA.
Intra-African trading today is not more than 15%. Any other continent, they are reaching 70 and 80% trading among each other. So with the AFCFTA, we are hoping that by the end of this year, we'll reach more than 50%. So they chose also under the trading companies and that are the implementers, they have made a special protocol for women and youth, financial and economic inclusion. So the central bank, for example, after implementing this initiative in Egypt, they allowed women and youth to open bank accounts with their ID without commercial registration or tax registration, and they gave them a visa machine, a POS, to go to the exhibitions and to go to the fairs and to sell their products and to have a bank account officially. This also will support them to start exporting.
Meanwhile, local women from the Eastern Cape province were exhibiting their products in the summit. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in East London, South Africa.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
As tariffs of 30% go into effect in South Africa, or in South African goods being imported into the United States, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has spoken to U.S. President Trump on the phone. They discussed bilateral trade and said their countries' negotiating teams will have more detailed talks, according to Mr. Ramaphosa's office. Kate Fisher reports from Washington.
Despite trying for months to negotiate a trade deal with Washington ahead of Donald Trump's deadline, there is now a 30% levy on most South African goods entering the US. It's the highest in sub-Saharan Africa, and it includes products that have for years been granted duty-free access to the US under AGOA. So it's things like cars, citrus fruit and wine. President Ramaphosa's office said that he and President Trump, quote, undertook to continue with further engagements, recognising the various trade negotiations the US is currently involved in, and adding that respective trade negotiating teams will take forward more detailed discussions. Now, their call on Wednesday coincided with a meeting between South Africa's Foreign Minister, Ronald Lamola, and the US's top diplomat currently in Pretoria, that's US Chargé d'Affaires David Green. But Pretoria's attempts at tariff negotiations have largely been ignored by the White House until now. Months ago, Pretoria proposed an offer to buy billions of dollars of US liquefied natural gas, as well as investment in some sectors in exchange for a lower tariff rate or sector-specific exemptions. But there was no response from the White House. Relations between the US and South Africa have certainly hit rock bottom since Donald Trump took office for his second term, with the US president repeating false claims of a white genocide in South Africa, also expelling the South African ambassador to the US, criticising South African policies aimed at redressing racial inequality, and of course criticising the country's close ties with nations like Russia and Iran, as well as Pretoria taking legal action against US ally Israel at the International Court of Justice over its war on Gaza. All of those things contributing to this difficult relationship between the two countries. And some analysts say that now these high tariffs, along with the cuts to aid programs made by the Trump administration in Africa, could push South Africa and other countries on the continent closer to China and Russia. And that, of course, is something that the US has previously tried to prevent. Kate Fisher, SABC News, Washington.
The 8th of August today. Well, let me take you back in history on this particular day. And we start in 1960. South Kasai secedes, and that's all happened in the Congo, the mining state of South Kasai, with its capital now Mbujimai, declared secession from the Republic of Congo under Chief Albert Kalonji. And 2 weeks later, well, the government forces recouped Bakwangwa, as it was known at the time. In 1976, and this was a few years before Zimbabwean independence, Rhodesian forces under Ian Smith launched an operation called Operation Eland, the Nyazonya raid, an incursion into Mozambique carried out by the notorious Selous Scouts at the time. During the struggle for independence, Zimbabwe had two bases, one in Zambia and one in Mozambique. And the one under Robert Mugabe was the one that was sitting in Mozambique at the time, as the frontline states of Zambia and Mozambique were assisting Zimbabwe in its struggle against Ian Smith's regime. In 1988, on the 8th of August, the Angolan Bush War effectively came to an end as a ceasefire was declared, and that effectively ended 2 decades of conflict, including countries such as South Africa, Cuba, as well as Angolan forces that were involved at the time. And then on August the 8th, 1962, in South Africa, Nelson Mandela appeared briefly in a Johannesburg magistrate's court on charges of leaving the country without a passport and inciting workers to strike. It's hard to believe that that wasn't so long ago, that South Africa and South Africans in general, the mass of the population, were undergoing such extreme oppression under the apartheid regime. So Nelson Mandela was in court briefly today in 1962 for having left the country without a passport and inciting workers to strike.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
It's 8 o'clock in Nairobi, 7 o'clock Central African time, and it is 6 a.m. in Dakar. A very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us for this second hour of Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective, broadcasting from our studios in Johannesburg and South Africa, on the internet at www.channelafrica.co.za. You can also find us on your mobile app. Just search for SABC Plus and you'll be able to find us there, Channel Africa, and you can take us wherever you go. A very good morning to you. I'm Peter Ndoro.
My name is Asanda. Beda. Very good morning, everyone. In this hour, we'll look at a topic that we touched on yesterday, where in recent weeks, migrants and refugees in South Africa have been reportedly blocked from accessing healthcare. So today, we hear from Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, who have raised their alarm on this same topic. We also go to Rwanda, where young people there as young as 15 years old will now be able to access contraception after the approval of a new law that aims to tackle teen pregnancies. Those stories and more coming up. Let's get our news first. Here's Nolutando Butelezi, and then following her is Fikile Lingwati with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has asked Finance Minister Kasiel Atto-Forson to also act as Defense Minister. This follows a military helicopter crash in which the Defense Minister was among those killed. The President's office said on Thursday. The helicopter was flying to gold mining town Abuasi with 5 officials, including Defense Minister Edward Omane Boama and Environment, Science and Technology Minister Ibrahim Motala Mohammed, and 3 Air Force crew on board when it crashed. In a televised address, President Mahama said a task force has been set up to find out what happened.
I want to assure the families and the nation that the Ghana Armed Forces has initiated a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances of this crash. An investigative board of inquiry has been set up to investigate the cause of the crash. The flight data and cockpit voice recorders have both been retrieved.
Sudan is accusing the United Arab Emirates of sending foreign fighters to back the paramilitary rapid support forces in Darfur region against the Sudanese armed forces. Abu Dhabi has denied these claims while Colombia has not issued a statement yet. Naba Mohaidian reports from Sudan.
It's not the first time that Sudan is accusing United Arab Emirates of backing and fueling the fighting in Sudan. UAE has always denied all of the accusations, despite that Sudan has filed an official complaint in United Nations Security Council. Some U.S. diplomats and UN experts verified that Colombian mercenaries contributed in the fighting and are training RSF. Some allied groups, Darfur allied groups, confirmed that at least 80 Colombian mercenaries were seen in and around Al-Fashir and are training RSF to use drone and artillery and are fighting with them. Colombia has officially apologized to the Sudanese government.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has held a telephone call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the crisis in Ukraine. Yesterday's discussion followed Putin's request to brief Ramaphosa on the peace process and to engage on issues of bilateral interest. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says that Putin expressed his recognition and appreciation of South Africa's involvement in advancing a peace process between Russia and Ukraine, while Ramaphosa expressed South Africa's full support of peace initiatives. Australia has urged Israel to withdraw from its intended plans to take military control of Gaza. Foreign Minister Penny Wong says that a permanent forced displacement is a violation of international law. She added that a two-state solution is the only pathway to secure and enduring peace and security within internationally recognized borders. Australia has not yet joined Western allies such as the UK, Canada, and France in announcing it would recognize Palestinian statehood, but said that it would make a decision at an appropriate time. The U.S. has doubled its reward for information leading to the arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to $50 million. The Attorney General Pam Bondi accused Maduro of collaborating with groups including the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico to send drugs and violence to the United States. For more stories, you can send them through to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In a sports headline, DR Congo end winless run with clinical victory over Zambia. And Kagiso Rabada says it's time to forget about the World Test Championship victory now. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter?
Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard?
Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126.
And we will call you back.
So you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views.
Share your opinion.
Engage with a community that values your perspective.
Follow us on our social media.
Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za
and get ready to share your views
on Channel Africa,
the African perspective.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained.
Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine.
Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m.
Central African Time.
The Johannesburg Stock Exchange All-Share Index in South Africa hit a record high of 100,800 points on Thursday afternoon, despite widespread U.S. tariffs ranging from 10 to 50% imposed on several countries, including South Africa. One key factor behind the rally in the local market is a shift in global capital from the United States to emerging economies like South Africa. Meanwhile, the rand strengthened to reach 17 rand 71 cent against the US dollar. Naledi Ngobo reports.
While local markets remain in positive terrain, there are concerns that the rand and the JSE could see some pressure later in the week as the Trump administration presses ahead with the tariffs. The U.S. has imposed a 30% tariff on imports from South Africa, which marks the highest duty charged on goods from any sub-Saharan nation. Mohammed Wagley is a portfolio manager at Sasfin Wealth.
If I look at the all-share, which is the proxy for the JSE, we've seen a near 20% gain in the year 2025. Now, if I isolate that to the 40 biggest companies, the top 40, that gain goes to about 23%. And then if I look sort of a little bit further, the Resource 10 index is really what's been driving performance. That's up about 70-odd%. If I look at the financials, we're seeing muted performance, much of a muchness really. If I look at property, more or less the same. If I look at retail, it's really not moved. So what's been driving performance is those resources, and specifically gold and platinum.
Government has assured that talks with the U.S. are ongoing despite the tariff imposition. The agriculture and automotive sector are expected to take the biggest hit from the tariffs. However, authorities continue to stress the urgency around diversifying export markets. Brenda says CEO Neville Make had this to say.
You have those companies that are still very interested knowing that South Africa is a stable economy, stable market, and easier to actually do business from South Africa as an entry point into the rest of the continent. And then you have those that are, of course, exporting to the U.S., that are currently doing business in the U.S. And the message has been quite clear that they've got to look at market diversification. They've got to look at other areas. It's unfortunate for the U.S. because what it does, not only for South Africa, but globally, because, it's many countries, as you've reported, it now makes the U.S. unattractive.
I'm Naledi Ngobo in Johannesburg.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
South Africa has recorded 10 confirmed cases of chikungunya, a mosquito-borne virus that's infected nearly 240,000 people and caused at least 90,000 deaths across 16 countries. Now, most of the cases in South Africa are travel-related, involving people returning from popular destinations such as Mauritius, Kenya, and Madagascar. Now, whilst these cases remain isolated, global health experts are urging vigilance, especially as China has reported over 7,000 cases in just a few weeks. And this is triggering containment measures somewhat reminiscent of the COVID-19 response. Well, to help us understand a little bit more about chikungunya is and how it spreads and whether South Africa and the rest of the continent should be concerned, we're now joined by Professor Tulo de Oliveira, who's the director of the Center for Epidemic Response and Innovation at Stellenbosch University. Thanks so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and good morning to all your listeners.
Let's begin with the basics. What exactly is chikungunya, and how does it compare with other mosquito-borne diseases like dengue or malaria?
Okay, thank you. So let's start. What the names mean? What chikungunya name means? Yeah, so chikungunya come from a language that's shared between northern Mozambique and Tanzania called Kimakonde, which means the one that bends up. Why that? Because you get such sore joints, yes, such as in your knees, in your elbows, that you really stay on bed bending. So that's the main characteristic of this virus, yeah. And so it is a different virus from dengue. Dengue is also a virus, but it is also transmitted by mosquito, the same mosquito, Aedes aegypti, yeah, and Aedes albopicus. And that are mosquitoes that are most prevalent in urban areas. So chikungunya and dengue tend to be diseases that are transmitted in urban or peri-urban areas, yeah, with a mosquito that it is different from the malaria mosquito, yeah. And that's why the world worry a lot of times more about chikungunya and dengue than malaria, because malaria tend to be more in rural and peri-urban areas, but chikungunya and dengue can enter big urban centers. So this new epidemic of chikungunya, it started really in the beginning of the year in the Reunion Island. So Reunion Island, it is part of the French territory, and they had a massive outbreak, 50,000 people infected in Reunion, and Reunion is a small island. And so from there, the virus spread to Mauritius. But when arriving Mauritius, the Mauritian authorities are already prepared to respond. And it also arrived when the mosquito population is going down. It was arriving kind of getting to the winter. And Mauritius had an outbreak, but much smaller than Reunion. And then from there, from Reunion, it spread to France. We have over 1,000 introductions to France, it spread to Kenya, and we have reasons to believe that's exactly the same variant of the virus that's now spreading through Asia and have entered China.
All right, so 240,000 people in China, I believe, alone, and I mean, across 16 countries, 90 deaths already. Do we know how many people have been infected in South Africa so far? And should we be concerned about a spread in South Africa and maybe neighboring countries?
Okay, so what we know about South Africa and neighboring countries, we know that we're gonna, if this virus keeps spreading around the world and people travel, yeah, we have big mobility, yeah, we're gonna get multiple introductions. So the NICD, the National Institute of Communicable Disease, already confirmed 10 introductions. What it mean an introduction? Someone that arrived in South Africa sick, yeah, and then when test, it is positive. But given that South Africa and the neighboring countries at the moment in the winter season, when the mosquito population is very low, we have no reason to believe that now during the winter and the spring that this virus will circulate and will be transmitted by mosquito in South Africa. However, we have to be a little bit better prepared when come our summer months, when the mosquito population increases in certain parts of the country.
How does the virus actually spread?
Okay, so how the virus spread? So this is a group of virus that it's called arbovirus. Yeah, so this means that they are spreaded by arthropods. Yeah, the main arthropods that spread this group of virus are mosquitoes. So it's when mosquito bites someone that is infected and has a high viral load, it will keep that virus in the gut, yeah, together with the blood of the person. And then when bite another person, it will transfer the virus, yeah. So that is how both dengue, chikungunya, yeah, Zika, yellow fever virus, are transmitted. So that is the virus that from this group called arbovirus transmitted by mosquitoes.
What kind of symptoms should people be looking out for, and how severe is this illness generally?
So let's answer your last question first. So this disease do not have what we call a high case fatality ratio. What it means, not many people that get infected get complications that end up dying. Yeah. So as you highlighted, we got close to 100 deaths from 250,000 diagnosed infections in 16 countries in 2025 alone. However, the disease can cause severe pain, especially in the joints. It can cause fever, it can cause sweating on the acute phase. But the problem of chikungunya is that sometimes the pain in the joints, it can last months or years. And that is why, for example, China is mounting such a response, because the bigger effect on chikungunya, it happened on the economy, especially on people that are out of work. Yeah. In some case, it's who get mostly affected. It's people that are manual laborers. For example, if they are manual laborers and working constructions, building a road or a house, and have severe joint pains, it's very difficult to work. Yeah, so that's the bigger economic effect in labor, people that work with labor. The second one is in tourism, yeah, because people, especially if people are going to be international travelers and are spending quite a lot of money to go to a place to enjoy themselves, they will try to avoid touristic areas. So that's, for example, why the Mauritian government, did also a very strong response, and they had very few cases of chikungunya in Mauritius, yeah. And the third one that affect a lot of which you the worry word is about the security personnel. So, for example, armies like for the United Nations or the U.S. Army, are some of the groups that spend the highest amount of resources on researching and diagnosing chikungunya, because sometimes it can get a whole battalion out of work for weeks if you have an infection sweeping.
All right, we've run out of time, but very briefly, are there treatments available against this virus?
So there is no treatment available. So what they do is try to control the symptoms, and the best advice, it is prevention. So for example, and sometimes the prevention is quite simple, it is what China is doing now, what's happened a lot in Brazil, that is controlling the mosquito population, and a lot of time as simple as clear like stagnant water from breeding sites, like from pots or old tires, and that's what we should be focusing. It's as it comes the summer months, to make sure that we can control the mosquito population, especially around the households.
All right, so we'll leave it there. Professor, thanks so much indeed for that very informative update. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you, and wish you and your listeners a great day.
That's Professor Tulio de Oliveira, Director of the Center for Epidemic Response and Innovation at Stellenbosch University, talking to us about chikungunya, a virus that's brought through by mosquitoes that we need to be careful of in the coming months particularly.
zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
Nduna wazamalonda ku Malawi aletsa kampani yopanga shuga ya Ilovo yomwe ndi nthambi ya Ilovo Sugar Group Limited kuti isiye kutumiza shuga kumaiko akunja. Malingana ndi nduna ya zamalonda Vitumbuko Mumba, izi zithandiza kuti shuga yemwe yakusowa pamsika azipezeka. Ndiye pano ndili ndi George Muhangu amene ali mu mzinda wa Blantyre mu dziko la Malawi. Chimene chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndi chani?
Chomwe chikupangitsa kuti shuga azisowa ndichonena kuti panopo ili ngati off season ya makampani a Ilovo Sugar Malawi, kunena kuti sakutha kupanga shugayi okwanira chifukwa akukolola. Ndiye akamaliza kukolola pameneno atayambeno sopano kugaya shugayi kuti azipezeka. Chinanso ndichonena kuti ma distributors amene akumakagula shuga kaya ndi ku Ilovo kaya ndi kusalima shuga akumagulisa ku maiko akunja ngati Zambia, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
So, in recent weeks, migrants and refugees in South Africa have reportedly been blocked from accessing healthcare, even in urgent cases like pregnancy or chronic illness. Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, has raised the alarm, calling the situation unacceptable. To help us understand more, we're joined on the line by Jane Rabutata, communications specialist at Doctors Without Borders, Southern Africa. Jane, good morning to you. How are you on this Friday?
Good morning, Asanda. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to the listeners too.
We appreciate you making time for us again this Friday. Let's talk about MSF and what you've seen then on the ground as MSF that prompted this warning about access to healthcare in South Africa.
Yes, Asanda, thanks for that question. And as you've already alluded to in your intro, our assessment was prompted by the reports which you have been following about the denial of access to healthcare to non-South Africans. So an MSF team visited 15 hospitals and clinics in Gauteng. What we basically wanted to understand was the severity of these blockages and basically the needs of people who are impacted by the blockages. And we really did find disturbing that the situation is disturbing Asanda on the ground. I mean, we are talking about pregnant women, patients who are on ARVs, and people who are on chronic medication who have been struggling for the past several weeks to get any form of medical services. Some just basically need their files so that they can be able to go to other health facilities that are not blocking patients, but cannot because they cannot even be allowed to get their files. Some just need prescriptions to be able to get refills. Think of people who are on ARVs and other medication which you cannot get at the pharmacy if you do not have a script. So we are basically speaking out as Doctors Without Borders to ensure that this problem, which is still going on, gets the attention that it deserves from the relevant authorities, especially the Department of Health.
How are these groups blocking people and who exactly are they targeting?
Yes, so it's a very strategic. If you remember in the beginning when the story broke out, we would see, on social media, large groups of people blocking and protesting outside clinics. When the MSF team went this time around to the facilities that we visited, we realized that it's a strategic mode of doing things right now, where you find about 2 or 10 people stationed at the clinic's gate or inside and basically blocking whoever is coming through, whether you're South African or not. But the target is non-South Africans because they're being asked to produce their identity documentation and to determine if they are legally documented in the country. So basically, if you are not South African, you are then denied entry by virtue of you not being South African.
Is this happening only in certain provinces in terms of what you've gathered with your research, or across the country?
We would say across the country, but our assessment focused mostly on facilities in Johannesburg, Durban, and Tshwane, because some of the patients that we were in touch with were through calls. Some we visited in and around Johannesburg, and some we contacted them through calls. Some were based in Durban and even in Pretoria, where they were telling us altogether we were in contact with about 50 patients who told us that they have been denied access to healthcare in 24 health facilities across Durban, Johannesburg, and Pretoria. That's where our assessment as MSF basically focused on. And we did manage to confirm that even though not all the 15 facilities that we visited were blocking people, but more than half of them were blocking people from accessing healthcare, which we find absolutely unacceptable given that the South African Constitution guarantees the right to free access to healthcare for everyone who lives in the country. Everyone is used deliberately in the Constitution because the human rights in the country are not only limited to South Africans. So we are speaking out to ensure that people are aware that everyone deserves the right to healthcare, and to also raise the alarm of the brewing challenge, especially to the public health system itself, which will later face a bigger problem if this current crisis is not given the attention that it deserves.
Yesterday, we carried an interview or a conversation with a group called Operation Dudula, who have openly admitted that they do have an issue with foreign nationals, those who are undocumented specifically, having access to healthcare services because it further strains our health resources. In terms of the undocumentation of foreign nationals, what have you seen? And those who get turned away from accessing healthcare, is that a big enough number that we can say it's only undocumented foreign nationals, as the Operation Dudula, that movement that's now become a political party as well, are saying that they're targeting? In your views as MSF, what have you seen?
Yes, Asanda, as MSF, our actions are guided by medical ethics and our principles of independence, impartiality, and neutrality, which enables us to provide medical care to everyone, regardless of their documentation. So we care about everyone. We were not basically focused on whether or not people are documented, because for us, that is not a big issue. We are not saying this is not an issue. We are saying that as MSF, we want to enforce respect for everyone who deserves the right to free access to basic health care. So what we found was that people were being turned away. Yes, they were being asked, do you have documentation? And what's disturbing, Asanda, some of the members who were in civilian clothing, we wouldn't say they were from Operation Dudula, but they did say we're supporting the actions of Operation Dudula, but most were community members or in civilian clothing. They said to us, we do not want non-South Africans to access healthcare because we believe that it's only South Africans who should be assisted. It's only South Africans who are paying. So we did not get a sense that it's actually about documentation, but the fact that if you are not South African, you are not entitled to access healthcare in this country.
Jane, I don't know if you can hear me, but the line is breaking there a bit. It sounds like it's a network issue. Can you
Hello,
hear us?
Asanda?
Yes, I can hear you clearly now. Are you still there, Jane?
I can hear you now.
Just finally, the steps that MSF wants health officials to take right now, and I guess it will be a collaborative effort with other departments then in terms of governance, things like border control as well as home affairs.
Yes, definitely, Asanda. It will be a collaborative effort. As MSF, our role is to speak out. We want to raise the alarm to the issue, but we do believe that the government, especially the Department of Health, because they have a jurisdiction over public health care facilities, it is for them now to take the necessary steps to ensure that all public health care facilities are ensuring that people who deserve to be assisted for any type of conditions do get the attention that they deserve, regardless of their legal status in the country. In terms of migration issues, like you said, that it should be a collaborative effort. We hope that the Department of Home Affairs will come on board and that everyone who needs to address the situation so that the country has a long-lasting solution instead of apportioning blame to non-South Africans. And at the same time, as MSF, we are definitely not ignoring the cries of South Africans. We do believe that both opposing points need to be given the attention.
Right. Jane, your line has gone back to being scrambled again, so let's just leave it there. But I think we get the gist of your final points. And thank you again for your time chatting to us here on Rise and Shine. Jane Rabutata is Communications Specialist at Doctors Without Borders, Southern Africa, and that's MSF, Southern Africa, raising the alarm on this very important issue. As she puts it, a solution is what needs to be figured out at this stage, instead of a blaming game and pointing fingers at different stakeholders or players involved on this issue. So at least we got the majority of that conversation before the lines jeopardize our conversation, and we leave it there for now. But 7:31 is the time, Central African time, and we get our news headlines now with Nolutando Buteles.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has asked Finance Minister Kasiel Ato-Fosan to also act as Defense Minister. This follows a military helicopter crash in which the Defense Minister was among those that were killed. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has held a telephone call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the crisis in Ukraine. And the Israeli Security Cabinet has approved plans for the military to take over Gaza City, a controversial escalation in the nearly 2-year war. I'll have the details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time now to take a look at what's happening in the sport, and it's always very exciting on a Friday because we look forward to a weekend of sport. And at the sports desk, giving us an update is Fikile Lingwati. Good morning, brother.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, Peter. We begin with football news ongoing in Africa. That is CHAN. DR Congo reignited their CAF African Nations Championship CHAN Pamoja 2024 campaign with a commanding 2-0 victory over Zambia in the second Group A match at the Nyayo National Stadium in Nairobi yesterday. Goals from Ibrahim Madobo and substitute Horso Muaku helped the Leopards bounce back from the opening day defeat to co-host Kenya and keep alive their hopes of reaching the knockout stages. The win also marked the end of a 5-match winless run for DR Congo at CHAN, while inflicting Zambia's first ever group stage defeat in the competition's history, a remarkable statistic that stretched across 12 matches prior to kickoff. And more news in football. Former Manchester United midfielder Scott McTominay has been nominated for the 2025 Men's Ballon d'Or Award. The Napoli and Scotland player was one of the 30 nominees for the prize, with the winner set to be announced on the 22nd of September. The nomination comes less than 12 months after McTominay was allowed to leave boyhood club Manchester United in order to join Napoli in a 19 million move. McTominay's nomination means he's the first Scot to be shortlisted since former Rangers striker Ali McCoist in 1987. McTominay was instrumental in Napoli's title success, scoring 12 times in 34 league appearances as he was crowned Serie A's Player of the Year. Now on to cricket news. South Africa's fast bowler Kagiso Rabada has urged his teammates to move on from their recent success in the ICC World Test Championship final and concentrate on winning more major trophies. The Proteas broke a long drought when defeating the Aussies in the World Test Championship final at Lord's earlier this year. Rabada has many fond memories from the memorable encounter at the home of cricket in June, but the pace spearhead wants his players to forget about that in their recent success and look forward to the next match.
Yeah, I think it was special, obviously, you know. I've done so many interviews on that. But yeah, I think it's time to move on now. I don't think we'll forget about that ever as a team. And South Africa won't ever. But time to move on now. Hey, the show moves on and we play the game of cricket. I guess so, you know. I guess it is. It's kind of like a relief. But yeah, the show moves on, and moving into the T20 World Cup, we'll approach it as we always have. I guess it will be a bit different now, you know. There's no fear of anything.
Let me end with golf news. Akshay Bashia picked up 4 strokes in the last 3 holes as he surged to an 8 under par 62 to seize a one-shot lead in the first round of the St. Jude Classic, the first event of the USPGA Tour FedEx Cup playoffs. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Nkhanza zokhudza amuna ndi azimayi kapena kuti gender-based violence GBV zikuwononga mioyo komanso kuphwasula midzi. Zikuchitika m'manyumba, m'masukulu, malo ogwirira ntchito ndipo kwambiri mwakachetechete. Koma sizikuyenera kupitirira. Mukazimva yankhulani. Ngati mwakhuzidwa funani chithandizo. Chifukwa kusachita chilichonse sikuthandiza. Mverani kuma wireless onse 10 asanu ndi anayi a SABC kuchokera lachitatu pa 23 mwezi uno wa Julayi kuti mumve zokambirana, malangizo, masewero, zionetsero za maphunziro ndi mafunso okhuza nkhanza za amuna ndi azimayi ndi akatswiri, anthu opulumuka ku nkhanzazi, kukhazikitsa lamulo komanso dziko lonse lokhuzidwa ndi nkhanzazi. Zonsezi pa wireless yomwe mumayikonda ya SABC. Imbirani pa nambala 0800 428 428 kuti munene za nkhanzazi kapena kupeza chithandizo. Nkhanza zokhuza amuna ndi azimayi zimatha ndi inu. Kutenga ukufikani kuchokera ku SABC.
Let's say good morning to Tabiso Lehuko, who's got our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. With the 30% tariffs on SA goods to the US set to take effect, former President Kgalema Motlanthe has weighed in on the increasingly volatile geopolitical climate. He says that the ANC party is not solely to be blamed for the state of affairs between Pretoria and Washington, describing US President Donald Trump as a loose cannon. However, as the South African government continues to explore strategies to cushion the blow while working to reinforce diplomatic and trade relations with the Trump administration, Motlanthe says the tariffs have been meted out to many other nations. Former South African President Kgalema Motlanthe.
Well, no, I wouldn't say the ANC is solely to blame for that because, you know, the U.S. president is someone, as I said, is a loose cannon. He's even gone to an extent of saying that, you know, if you apply for a visa from whatever country, South Africa included, so they then check what you've been posting on social media. And if whatever you've been posting is read by them as negative, they deny you the visa.
The South African Farmers Development Agency says the US imposed a 30% tariff increase on South African imports will cripple many farmers, especially in the cane growing industry in KwaZulu-Natal province. He says many farmers who export their fresh produce to the US will not be able to make any profit. In the province's post-budget speech consultative engagement, SAFTA's chairperson, Dr. Siyabonga Madlala, called on government to help businesses to secure alternative international markets.
Now, with Trump actually imposing these tariffs, we see this undermining the spirit of the AGOA, and we are losing what would have been a lucrative market we've been enjoying for years. 24,000 tons now would be at risk that would be exporting to America. But I must say, we are surviving. We've been surviving the adverse weathers, as you know.
South Africa's Public Works and Infrastructure Minister, Dean McPherson, has directed the Board of Independent Development Trust to investigate all contracts issued during the suspended Chief Executive Officer, Tebogo Malaka's reign. McPherson says he wants all others involved in corrupt activities to be exposed. He was briefing journalists in Cape Town after opening a criminal case against Malaka and her spokesperson, Pasha Maholane.
I briefed the board on my intended actions today and to understand what processes will unfold with regards to the disciplinary case against the suspended CEO.
The Zambian government has dismissed warnings by the U.S. Embassy of dangerous pollution in the Copperbelt mining region linked to a toxic spill earlier this year. On Wednesday, the embassy ordered its staff to leave the Kitwe area in the north of the country. The BBC Shingai Nyoka has the details.
Officials said today that there was no need to press the panic button, that constant monitoring and lab tests show that the pH levels of the water in Chimbashi, northern Zambia, have returned to normal and meet the World Health Organization standards.
$1, or rather, the dollar rose after Bloomberg reported Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller is emerging as a top candidate to serve as the central bank's chair among President Donald Trump's team. It is reported that Waller has met with members of Trump's team who are impressed with him, though he has not met with the president. Trump has criticized current Federal Chair Jerome Powell, whose term will end in May, as being too slow to cut interest rates, and some investors are concerned that his replacement will not act independently of the Trump administration. $1 is trading at 1,527 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.39. Kenya, 128 shillings 6, and Zambia, 23 kwacha 57. The BRICS countries in Brazil, $1 there will cost you 5.45. Russia, 79 rubles 45. India, 87 rupees 56. China, 71.18. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 73 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities markets: gold $3,388 and platinum $1,342 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $66.34 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
SABC Sports, or the South African Broadcasting Corporation Sports, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the nation's rugby team, Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. It started on the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2, and you can tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, and no subscription is needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 Central African Time in PM on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation is pleased to announce the launch of the new self-registration platform. Now, vendors wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform, where vendors are able to access the platform on our website, www.sabc.co.za /under e-tenders or self-register. and follow the prompts. Visit SABC social media pages also for more details.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
The Kremlin has confirmed that President Vladimir Putin has agreed to a face-to-face meeting with US President Donald Trump as early as next week, after the White House indicated an openness to such a meeting. The meeting between the leaders, which would include Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, would be the first since Donald Trump returned to the White House in January. Now, news of the possible meeting emerged after U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met with Putin in Moscow on Wednesday this week. Now, the U.S. president posted on social media that he had updated some European allies and that they would all work towards ending Russia's war with Ukraine in the days and weeks to come. Sherwin Bryce-Peace picks up the story for us from New York.
News of the Putin-Trump meeting comes in the context of U.S. threats to impose additional sanctions on Russia, as frustration in Washington grows at the lack of progress in ending the over 3-year conflict. Trump on Wednesday asked if Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky had agreed to the summit.
There's a very good prospect that they will, and we haven't determined where, but we had some very good talks with President Putin today, and there's a very good chance that we could be ending the end to that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
President Putin has since also weighed in, saying that the United Arab Emirates would be an appropriate venue for such a meeting, after meeting with the country's President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan in Moscow.
Both sides showed their interest. Which side was first to say whatever word, it does not matter. We have a lot of friends that are ready to help us organize such an event. Here is one of our friends, the President of the United Arab Emirates. I think we will decide later, but this could be one of the suitable venues. I have been repeatedly saying that I, in general, have nothing against it. This is possible, but before that, certain conditions should be created, and unfortunately, we are still far from creating such conditions.
President Trump had threatened additional sanctions on Russia by Friday if it didn't make moves towards ending the war, while also warning of secondary sanctions on countries that buy Russian exports, evidenced by a decision to raise tariffs on India to 50% over its imports of Russian oil. Listen to Timothy Ash, an associate fellow in the Eurasia program at the UK's Chatham House.
Putin really, I think, has decided he wants a long war, right? And time plays on the inside. And I think this suggestion of this air corridor, whatever you want to call it, he's buying time, right? He wants to avoid anything that would see more sanctions levied on him. You know, I mean, they're a little bit nervous about the tariffs on the India tariffs, right? The 100% situation, but they don't really think Trump will actually do it. But they think by throwing a little bone to Trump, Witkoff's there, letting Witkoff come back with something, it'll buy them a bit more time to continue to wage war, because they think the longer they leave it, the longer they continue the fight, ultimately Ukraine will buckle, the Western alliance will weaken, appetite to continue support Ukraine will kind of moderate, and in the end Putin will get everything he wants, which is the whole of Ukraine. That is the reality.
Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky says that while Russia appeared more inclined towards a ceasefire, the details would be significant.
While traveling from our brigades here in Sumy region, I spoke with President Trump. This was a conversation following the visit to Moscow by President Trump's representative, Steve Witkoff. Our joint position with our partners is absolutely clear and transparent. The war must end, and it must end honestly. It is very important that it be resolved honestly. European leaders were also on the call. I am grateful to each of them for their support. We discussed what was said in Moscow. It appears that Russia is now more inclined to consider a ceasefire The pressure on them is working. But the main thing is to make sure they don't deceive anyone in the details, neither us nor the United States.
A Trump-Putin face-to-face would be the first meeting between a sitting US and Russian president since Joe Biden met Putin in Geneva in June 2021, some 8 months before Russia launched the largest attack on a European nation since World War II. The diplomatic maneuvers come at a time when the United States was expected to ramp up economic pressure on Russia, including through secondary sanctions, as were the punitive tariffs announced on India, and similar threats to impose an additional 25% duty on Chinese exports to the United States, with Beijing currently the biggest importer of Russian oil. Both countries have rejected the effort as unfair and unreasonable, while vowing to protect their energy security and economic sovereignty. All this while the US-based Center for Strategic and International Studies estimates the total casualties from the Russia-Ukraine war at around 1.5 million, including as many as 350,000 deaths. I'm Shervin Bryce-Pease in New York.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
10 minutes to go before the top of the hour. We look at this story now, going to Zambia, where the government there and the family of the late former president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, will find out today if the former leader will be laid to rest in South Africa or repatriated to his home country. This as the High Court in Pretoria will deliver a judgment on Lungu's burial place this morning. Lungu, who was the president of Zambia between 2015 and till 2021, passed away at a Pretoria hospital in South Africa in June this year. His family want him to be buried in South Africa in a private ceremony, while the Zambian government wants him to be buried in Embassy Park in Lusaka. To discuss this further, we're joined on the line now by our reporter, Michael Mbewe. Michael, how are you this morning? Michael, are you there? Michael, good morning. All right, I think the line dropped there. We're going to try and get a hold of Michael Mbewe to discuss this. And we also will want to, just look back in terms of that tennis match that took place in this story, how we got to this point, the tennis match between the Lungu family and the Zambian government, and South Africa playing umpire, or at least attempting to, on that. Michael, I understand you are on the line now. How are you?
Good, thanks. And how are you, Asanda? Good morning, and good morning to our listeners in Africa and beyond.
Great. Let's talk about the background on the story. There was a serious tennis match going on between the government of Zambia and the family of the late President Edgar Lungu, and then South Africa coming in to sort of attempt to play umpire. Let's wrap up in terms of how we got to this point.
It's like a ping pong, Asanda, as you have alluded. But this comes after, the South African High Court in Pretoria halted plans to bury former Zambian President Edgar Lungu at a private ceremony just as it was about to start. We recall the news was only announced to mourners at the Cathedral of Christ, the King in Johannesburg, where we're told about the delay after the funeral mass had finished, the church in South Africa. So the Pretoria court gave a Zambian Attorney General, Mulilo D. Kabisha, who actually, initiated this halting of the burial. So he was given until 4th July to submit his amended notice of motion in support of Lungu's repatriation to Zambia. So his family had until 11th July to file their opposing papers. So this matter was heard as a special motion on the 4th of August. Just last week, 2025, the court said they will be giving the judgment today. But this being the, a matter, a row between the government and Lungu's family over his burial after the family opted for a private ceremony in South Africa. So the state arguing that this move will not be, the right move, given that the statesman was loved by his people, and then also it really paints a big picture to Zambia to say why is this matter not being attended at the highest level, but it's only playing in the public domain, in the social media platforms. So today we are expecting that the judgment will be delivered. We don't know which side it will swing, Asanda, but it's a big day. Tensions are high. We will see what will happen today this morning at 11 o'clock.
So as much as we don't know which direction the High Court's decision will go, what are the people of Zambia saying? The family, the Lungu family, is still at loggerheads with the Zambian government. They're not speaking in one voice still. What do you think is being anticipated then? And you say it's been playing out on social media in terms of the ordinary Zambians speaking out, in terms of what they're expecting the High Court decision to go in the direction of either the family or the government?
Well, public opinion, they're differing because at the heart of this, Asanda, is the issue that this family is running away from Zambia, the persecution, because they're being accused of accumulating so much wealth, properties and land, the wife and then the family, who one of them is also a member of parliament who is being sought by parliament. So most of the people are seeing this as, they are running away from facing, justice in their own country. So at the bottom of this, the public sentiment, they are all divided. They don't know exactly why there's too much of this secrecy. And then according to suggested information also, we are hearing that the Lungu, when he was when he was sick, the government was denying him to fly to South Africa to seek medical assistance in South Africa because they saw it as a way of escaping from the persecutions. So it's high time that this matter, South Africa also has to be transparent, because we hear also that he traveled to South Africa without, using the right channels. You and I, when we're traveling, we have to use a passport and then go through immigration. So rumors are that he didn't even, the Home Affairs system, there is any information recorded that Lungu and his family came to South Africa legally. So there's so much on this matter. A lot of skeletons will come out maybe after the judgment. Many are wishing that the older statesman, the late former president of Zambia, must be buried in Zambia, because to be buried in a foreign land, it doesn't really, set up a good precedence. Just to give you another example, where in 2021, Kaunda's family also had an issue with the government, where the family said they wanted to lay him to rest next to his wife at his place where designated by the government. However, the government went ahead and buried Kaunda at an embassy memorial park in Lusaka, without the consent of the family. So it's not the first time that we are here, Asanda.
Do we know if there will be any representation in terms of court appearances today from the Zambian government, and what kind of impact could that have on public opinion, not just in the Zambian citizens, but on the world stage?
Well, the Zambian, the arguments happened on the 4th. That was on Monday. So today, merely we are just waiting for the judgment to be passed, to say, okay, it's going to be buried in South Africa according to the family's wish, but or either it's going to be buried in Zambia according to the government's wish. So yes, they have been represented by a senior counsel. I think they're from South Africa, but also the Attorney General himself is a lawyer by profession. So he was speaking to him on Monday. He was very confident. He was happy that the presiding officers have delivered according to. There was a balanced, deliverance of arguments, and then also allowing time for both parties to air their views. So today, merely Asanda is judgment day to say whether it's going to be buried in South Africa as the family wishes, or he is going to be buried in Zambia, according to the government, but also the people of the Republic of Zambia.
Right, let's leave it there for now, Michael. Thank you so much for shedding light on this issue. All eyes then will be on that decision by the High Court in Pretoria in South Africa today. I'm sure we'll catch up again next time to analyze more.
Absolutely. I think maybe we'll be also crossing over to you during the update show with Lulu.
Great stuff. Michael Mbewe is our Channel Africa reporter talking about an issue that really needs to be laid to rest. Excuse the pun. It's 8 o'clock Central African time. A very good morning to you as we enter the third and final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. This is Channel Africa. My name is Asanda Beda. Thank you for staying with us as we come to you live from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa on www.channelafrica.co.za, on the SABC Plus app, as well as live streaming via YouTube on @ChannelAfrica1.
A very good morning. I'm Peter Ndoro. Very happy on Fridays. But sadly, in the next half an hour, the subject that I'll be talking about isn't a happy one. It's incredible to believe that Sudan is now in its third year of a civil war between two military, I won't even say factions, because one is the National Army, and then there's a military outfit that's been engaged in a civil war in the country. 2018, 2019, the people took to the streets in a revolution, and there was hope that a new Sudan was going to be born. But sadly, the military pretty much have taken over the country, and they're fighting amongst each other. And this has led to displacement, genocide, and this situation is escalating as international players are more involved. I'll be unpacking that with the political commentator in the next 30 minutes, so stay with us for that. First, though, the news with Nolutando Buthelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has asked Finance Minister Kasiel Ato-Fusan to also act as Defense Minister. This follows a military helicopter crash in which the Defense Minister was among those killed, the President's office said on Thursday. The helicopter was flying to gold mining town Abuasi with 5 officials, including the Defense Minister Edward Omane Boama and Environment, Science and Technology Minister Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed, as well as 3 Air Force crew on board when it crashed. In a televised address, President Mahama said a task force has been set up to find out what happened.
I want to assure the families and the nation that the Ghana Armed Forces has initiated a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances of this crash. An investigative board of inquiry has been set up to investigate the cause of the crash. The flight data and cockpit voice recorders have both been retrieved.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has held a telephone call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the crisis in Ukraine. Yesterday's discussion followed Putin's request to brief Ramaphosa on the peace process and to engage on issues of bilateral interest. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwanya reports.
President Putin expressed his recognition and appreciation for South Africa's involvement in advancing a peace process between Russia and Ukraine. President Ramaphosa welcomed the briefing and expressed South Africa's full support to peace initiatives that will end the war and contribute to a lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine.
Several members of South Africa's Operation Dudula have been arrested and are being held at Diepkloof Police Station in Soweto. The nationwide Operation Dudula campaign bars undocumented foreign nationals from accessing services at public health facilities in the country. The campaign members were apprehended during an operation at a Johannesburg hospital. The group's actions have been criticized by government and other advocacy groups. Research has found that illegal foreign nationals amount to 70% of patients at public health facilities. The president of Operation Tutula Zandile Dabula says the police service has not formally charged any of its members. United Nations Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has condemned the escalation in deadly attacks by the Rwandan-backed M23 and other armed groups against civilians in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo over the past month. This comes despite the DRC government and the M23 group signing a declaration of principles in Qatar in July. They had agreed to a ceasefire and to further negotiate towards a comprehensive agreement. This was preceded by the signing of a peace agreement in Washington, D.C. between the DRC and Rwanda in June. The Human Rights Office has called on the signatories of both agreements to ensure real progress for civilians in the DRC. For more stories, you can send them to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, the Confederation of African Football has provisionally approved Somhlolo National Stadium in Eswatini. And Kagiso Rabada says it's time to forget about the World Test Championship victory now. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Now, incredibly, Sudan is now in its third year in terms of civil war that's been playing out, and this week it took an even darker turn. Khartoum's army says it's destroyed a United Arab Emirates aircraft as it landed in RSF-held Darfur, allegedly carrying Colombian mercenaries and weapons, claims that the UAE has denied as regional tension and proxy dynamics intensify. At the same time, investigations point to a mass killing at Zamzam displacement camp in April that may have left well over 1,500 civilians dead, while the siege at El Fasher has driven famine-level hunger and disease, with the UN and World Food Programme warning of imminent starvation and UNICEF flagging cholera risks to the hundreds of thousands of children. So we're going to unpack all of this with Dr. Abdul Karim El-Goni, who's a Sudanese political commentator and a health expert, to help us make sense of what's happening in Sudan at this time. Dr. El-Goni, thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for handling Sudan issues. We need more of it all the time.
So Sudan's been through a lot over the years, and I'm not sure that things have ever been this bad. Even during the worst of the Bashir regime, were things ever this bad?
No, things have never been bad like this. Not only have never been, but no Sudanese have ever thought we will be in such a situation, because the Sudanese are very peace-loving people. And they were known for this for centuries. We don't know what has befallen us in this war. But at least there is some experience. As you know, a number of the government officials of al-Bashir's time were indicted by the ICC. So we have seen some of this happening in Darfur in 2003, 2005. But we thought that that would be the end of it, especially after the revolution that we had in 2018, 2019 that deposed al-Bashir. We felt that, those peace-loving people will now open a new window of opportunity for Sudan, this rich country, but things didn't go the way we thought.
All right, let's talk about some of the current issues. This UAE plane incident. The government is saying that the UAE has sponsored Colombian mercenaries to deal with to get involved in this incursion. The UAE is denying this. What do we know?
I want to be very frank with you. You see, this war in Sudan is a sort of a regional proxy battleground. Before the war started, 1 week before the war started, the RSF took a battalion and they went to a northern town in Sudan, Merowe, and they captured more than 200 Egyptian pilots. And they said those Egyptian pilots were brought there to do what. The army said, no, those pilots are here for training us. They are not the first time to be here. So this issue of foreigners being part of the war in Sudan has been raised against the army, that they were Eritreans fighting with the army. There is the issue that the army is saying RSF, there are people from Niger, from Chad, fighting with them. Now we hear about this Colombians. But at least I heard the UAE saying all those are falsifications of information. There is nothing like this that has happened. But also, I think the Colombian president was asked in one of the meetings, do you have people who have been fighting in Sudan? He said, no, I have no idea. But we have heard of it and we will create an inquiry. But there is no proof of this. But as I told you, this is a regional proxy war, so everything is possible.
And then in April, we saw the Zamzam massacre. Do we know who is implicated and how this fits into the broader pattern of abuses that we've been seeing during this conflict?
You see, this is a very sad situation. When the war started, almost 9 months after the war started, there is an agreement locally in Al-Fashir, in Niala, in Al-Fula, in many towns, that this war is a central war in Khartoum. Let us not fight each other. There's an agreement between RSF and the army officers in those towns. Let us wait for the war to finish in Khartoum. Whoever wins, we are all for this country. And this was an agreement that was going on for a year. But after about a year, the Minawi faction decided to side with the army officially. And when he did that, he moved from the officers into Zamzam camp, this is in a way a sort of creating weaponization of a humanitarian space. And then war is war. War doesn't distribute roses. It's killing. So, and the gun doesn't differentiate between a refugee and an army officer of Minawi. And this is how it happened. It is a very sad situation. Thousands were killed. But anyway, this issue of killing civilians is a sort of a shared pattern of violations between the two warring factions in Sudan. We know that the army have killed thousands, and we know that the RSF has killed thousands. And this is why we work very hard to have cessation of hostilities. We, as civilians, we are the grass over which the two fat elephants are fighting.
All right, let's try and figure out at the moment who has the upper hand. RSF, that pretty much controlled Darfur, and then you've got the National Army. It seems to be going left and right as the war has continued.
No one has the upper hand. And all the military commentators are saying there is no military solution for this crisis in Sudan. It has to end on the negotiations table. Not only this war, but all the previous wars in Sudan. There are more than 5 wars in Sudan that all ended on the negotiation table. But this time the army is adamant that they are not going to negotiations. They are not allowing the RSF and whoever is with them to have a hand in power in Sudan. So there is no upper hand. Let me put it that way.
Why are these parties failing to agree on a cessation of hostilities?
I think there are 3 main things that I can look at it. One of them is the army is the political party that have been ruling Sudan for more than 3/4 of its life. And it is very difficult for them to be weaned from power. So they want it to have the upper hand all the time. This is one. The second one is that the army in the last 30 years has been pushed to have only Muslim Brotherhood members. So practically the army became like a militia for the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is what made al-Bashir scared that the army might have a coup against him. And he created the RSF to protect him from his army. This is another reason that this power struggle, everyone can't see the other one sitting on that chair. The third one is, as I told you earlier, that this regional involvement in Sudan. Egypt has interest in Sudan, the Emirates has interest in Sudan, Chad has interest in Sudan, Ethiopia. So South Sudan, all those are actually intermingling in it directly or indirectly. And this is why we find it very difficult to bring all this rainbow of interest to a central place.
Dr. Hamdok was in South Africa recently. I actually had the opportunity to meet him, and he was talking about the demise of democracy. Tell me about whether his visit had any useful outcome. I'm sure he engaged with South African authorities.
You see, this war is a setback to the democratization process that have started in Sudan under the chairmanship of Dr. Hamdok. And he has done a lot to Sudan. He has taken Sudan off, bringing him back into the international community. He brought programs in Sudan that are supporting the poor. He stabilized the currency. He did a lot of things in a very short period. But unfortunately, the army officers and the Muslim Brotherhood were under the ground trying to pull him down. His visit here was part of the effort of bringing an end to the war. As you know, 2 years ago, the civilians under the chairmanship of Hamdok have wrote down a sort of a roadmap to end the war, and gave this roadmap to the army, Burhan, and gave another copy to Hemeti and asked them, please, can we sit together and create an end? At least let us have a ceasefire. Both of them verbally agreed. But then when they came to sign, only Hemeti came and signed that he is agreeing to stop the war and he will do whatever he wants. So practically he supported a move towards a civilian government. But al-Burhan refused completely. And this is what created some sort of alignment between the civilians of RSF. Why? Because RSF, all through the war, he's always accepting any call for ceasefires. But the army, all through the war until today, they are always against the war. So Hamdok, when he came here, South Africa is one of the democracies of Africa, and he had good discussions here. There is good support for it, especially the media in South Africa has spread new information that people didn't have directly from Dr. Hamdok and his team. The discussions were good, and we hope that the efforts of South Africa within the African Union and beyond the African Union will help us to come to a ceasefire soon.
South Africa has been involved in helping Sudan find its feet in previous years. I remember President Jacob Zuma on a mission there. I think he was still deputy president at the time. Is there anything more that South Africa can do?
You see, a few months ago, there was a meeting in Pretoria, a conference on peace in Africa, headed by President Mbeki. And President Mbeki succeeded in inviting both the Sudanese government and the RSF. And both of them were here, and he was almost bringing them together to a ceasefire, to sit together and discuss a ceasefire. But suddenly, the army decided not to go forward with we don't know what happened. But South Africa has never stopped giving Sudan an opportunity for peace and development. But it's very sad. Politics is politics. But we should not despair. South Africa should continue doing this on political grounds, should continue doing humanitarian support, and we look forward to its support all the time.
Is there a side, do you think, that's more culpable than the other? The RSF has now formed this parallel government, and as you've been saying, they seem each time to pull back to any agreement that's put on the table. But at the same time, the national government, as it is constituted at the moment, also seized power, essentially in a coup. So both perhaps not legitimate, but is there one more culpable than the other in terms of prolonging this conflict?
As I told you, the military are the party, the political party that has governed Sudan all its life. So if there is a culpable, it is the military. This is one. Two, what is happening now in Western Sudan is a sort of multifaceted strategy of negotiation tactic. What the civilians have found is that RSF is always prone to agree to a ceasefire. And they wanted to keep him in that field, not to go and openly and say, I am not. So they are working with him to try and produce a civilian government in the areas that are not governed by the army. But let me also mention this point, that the army more than a year ago have decided to let go of Western Sudan. So when they changed the currency, they refused to give it to Western Sudan. When the IDs and things, they refused to give them. So they practically partitioned Sudan about a year ago, but not openly, but in practice. So what is happening now, the people in all those areas of Darfur, Kordofan and South, the Blue Nile, they are saying, we need service. Who will give us a service? So this government that has been is going on is trying to provide services in areas that the government of Port Sudan is refusing to produce and refusing to recognize people in those areas. It is a complex things, but for me, I feel it has put a lot of pressure on Port Sudan to come to the negotiating table, and I look forward to them pushing more to bring the army to the negotiations table.
What about the civilians? I mean, 2018, 2019, I have a vivid image of a woman wearing white and became a symbol of resistance and a new order as Bashir's government came to an end. There was so much hope in the air, and all of us held our breath for a moment. Where is it now?
See, let me be very frank with you. I can say firmly that almost 90% of the Sudanese were part of the revolution in Sudan, inside Sudan and outside Sudan. There is no capital in the world where the nationals and the Sudanese in that country have not been marching in support of the revolution in Sudan. But unfortunately, as I told you, the army refused to be weaned of power and created this war that we are suffering from now. Civilians, actually, this war is committed against civilians. Whoever is killed by the army is a Sudanese civilian. Whoever is killed by the RSF is a Sudanese civilian. And there is no civilian who is holding a gun. We are only speaking and promoting peace and security. So the situation is like this. We are now dispersed in so many cities in Sudan and in so many cities out Sudan under very difficult situations. And we don't see any light of hope at the end of the tunnel as I speak to you now. It is something very depressing. Many Sudanese have used all their resources, and it is very difficult for the civilians.
We're hearing reports that former Bashir supporters are staging some kind of political comeback. Is that happening, and how might this shape Sudan's future governance, especially also given, as you've described, that the RSF actually were handpicked by Bashir himself?
It is true, the national our party is having a comeback. As I told you, in the 30 years of the rule of al-Bashir, they have put their people in every important position in Sudan, civilian or military. And they refuse the winning of power. And actually, as we are talking now, al-Bashir and all the people who have been indicted by the ICC, who were in prison, are now all of them released and walking normally among the people, because this government is not thinking of any peace in Sudan. They are saying it very clearly. Either we come back to power or the Sudan can be disentangled. We have no problem. If you leave us only with two cities, we will rule those two cities. Actually, one of the generals of the army said, they asked him, when is this war going to stop? He said openly, if the 44 million Sudanese have died in this war, we are not going to stop the war.
Wow.
So they are adamant that they are continuing this fighting. And I think there must be a day when this thing is going to stop.
At the moment, Gaza is very much in the news in terms of aid being prevented to get to Palestinians on the Gaza Strip, and that we're seeing starvation playing out there. This is happening in Sudan right now.
It's not only starvation. Actually, UNICEF is saying there is the dual action of starvation and cholera in Sudan. Khartoum alone, there is more than 7,000 cases reported in Khartoum, 200 deaths. And the other state cities, it's the same. But no one is reporting about it. People are dying like flies. And we know, just last week in Khartoum, there were a big area that was a football pitch before. They found there are thousands of people who have been buried there. There are so many families who buried their members inside their houses because they are unable to take them to the burying spaces. So the death toll is huge. No one knows about it, and it is still continuing. And both parties, both military factions, are party to this, to what is happening now. You see, one of the disasters that has happened in Sudan is that there is an army faction that was with the RSF, and he is the one who went and occupied Jazeera State. And he created huge atrocities. Villages were just decimated. After 6 months, he was called to al-Bashir's side. He moved out of RSF and he went back to the army, and the army celebrated that this man came back. So practically this war, there are so many things that we don't know. This man pretended that he's an RSF, and he created atrocities and came back as if he was given a job to do within the RSF. So this war, we don't know a lot of what is happening. This power struggle is very strange.
Darfur was the scene of a massive genocide in decades past. And Omar al-Bashir needs to answer at the International Court of Justice. Is there a genocide taking place even now? We hear reports of RSF targeting ethnic black Africans. And on top of that, gender-based violence, rapes taking place.
You see, the problem of Sudan is like an elephant. They said they tied the eyes of 5 people and asked them to tell what is that they are holding in their hands. And the one who was holding the foot of the leg of the elephant said something. The one who was holding the ear said something different. The one who was holding the tail said something different. Each statement in itself is true, but it is not telling the whole story of the thing. So what I want to tell you is this, that this problem of Sudan, when we speak about it, that there are atrocities that definitely done by the RSF, But that is not the whole story. There is atrocities that were done by the army. That is not the whole story. There are atrocities committed by the civilians themselves, who started looting their neighbors and the neighborhoods. Okay? And this is the fact, but it is not telling the whole story. There are people who are trying to stop this war, but it's not the whole story. There are countries who are publicly saying we want the war to stop, but under the table they are doing something else. So there are so many statements about the war of Sudan that are true, but they are not telling the full picture. The full picture is that we as civilians are suffering in Sudan. There is no one who is going to win this war militarily, and that everyone must pull their effort together to have a cessation of hostilities in Sudan.
All right. So sadly, we run out of time, but perhaps if you could paint a picture for us of if what's carrying on right now carries on, what do you see happening? And also, what needs to happen to stop this conflict and perhaps return Sudan to some kind of normality?
I will start by a best case scenario, because I am an optimistic guy. We expect that there will be de-escalation of army activities in hotspots, especially like El Fashir, Al Ubaid, some areas so that people can have peace and do things. We look forward for a coordinated diplomatic effort. It has already started. We were very optimistic last week that there was a meeting in the US that will handle the Sudan issues, and we felt very optimistic about it, but in the last moment it was. So we are hoping that meeting will be happening soon and creating but the most important thing for us is that we need an enhanced humanitarian delivery to the Sudanese within Sudan and outside Sudan. And I hope that South Africa should collect as much humanitarian support that they can do to help the Sudanese who are there. The worst case scenario is that the process of dividing Sudan that was started by Port Sudan government behavior might be the end result of this, and we go into a Libya scenario where we will have two governments in two capitals in Sudan.
Wow. Dr. Abdul Karim El-Goni, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for giving us some clarity on this crisis that's taking place in Sudan, and let's hope that if we continue to talk about it, that something may be done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and I look forward that you are being listened to in many African countries. I hope that you continue handling Sudan issues, highlighting the necessity of peace for the Sudanese. Thank you very much.
We'll certainly do so. That was Dr. Abdul Karim El-Goni, a Sudanese political commentator, speaking to us about the Sudan crisis. And it's a very, very complicated situation. And throughout it all, the civilians, the innocent citizens, are the ones that are suffering the most. It's 8:30. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Several members of South Africa's Operation Dudula have been arrested and are being held at Diepkloof Police Station in Soweto. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has held a telephone call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the crisis in Ukraine. And President Donald Trump's administration has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to lift a lower court order that barred U.S. government agents from making immigration-related arrests in Los Angeles based on racial profiling. I'll have the details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's catch you up with some sports now. Here's Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And we start off with football news this hour. The Confederation of African Football, CAF, has provisionally approved Somhlolo National Stadium to host some international matches. The National Arena was banned from hosting Category A matches for both the Confederation of African Football and the International Federation of Association of Football, that's FIFA, in 2019. This ban left the country with only the Mavuso Sports Center for such high-profile games. The stadium was recently inspected by CAF officials. One source revealed that the venue was on the verge of hosting international games again, which would relieve the Eswatini Football Association, EFA, and local teams participating in CAF interclub competitions from the burden of securing alternative venues outside the country. And the DR Congo has won in the CHAN. DR Congo reignited their CAF African Nations Championship CHAN Pamoja 2024 campaign with a commanding 2-0 victory over Zambia in the second Group A match at the Nyayo National Stadium in Nairobi yesterday. Goals from Ibrahim Madobo and substitute Horso Mwaku helped the Leopards bounce back from their opening day defeat to co-host Kenya and keep alive their hopes of reaching the knockout stage. On to cricket news. South Africa's fast bowler Kagiso Rabada has urged his teammates to move on from their recent success in the ICC World Test Championship final and concentrate on winning more trophies. While Rabada has many fond memories from the memorable encounter at the home of cricket in June, but the pace spearhead wants his players to forget about their recent success.
Yeah, I think it was special, obviously, you know. I've done so many interviews on that. But yeah, I think it's time to move on now. I don't think we'll forget about that ever as a team, and South Africa won't ever. But time to move on now. Hey, the show moves on and we play the game of cricket. I guess so, you know. I guess it is. It's kind of like a relief. But yeah, the show moves on, and moving into the T20 World Cup, we'll approach it as we always have. I guess it will be a bit different now, you know. There's no fear of anything.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Mozambique's opposition leader Venancio Mondlane has been charged with incitement to terrorism and disobedience. He faces a total of 5 charges. The charges relate to post-election violence that left hundreds of people dead. What punishment is he looking at?
The most severe charges are 2. One is incitement for terrorism, and also is being charged for mobilizing people for terrorism during the protests. These charges are really serious and severe. If he is condemned, is found guilty, he could serve 10 years plus years in jail, meaning that he would be banned from political participation, mainly for the 2028 and 2029 electoral cycle.
The director of CDD, the Center for Democracy and Development, Adriano Novunga.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Let's now check in with the world of business as we say good morning to Tabiso Lihuku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. With the 30% tariffs on South African goods to the US set to take effect, former President Kgalema Motlanthe has weighed in on the increasingly volatile geopolitical climate. He says that the ANC party is not solely to be blamed for the state of affairs between Pretoria and Washington, describing US President Donald Trump as a loose cannon. Motlanthe comments.
Well, no, I wouldn't say the ANC is solely to blame for that because, you know, the U.S. president is someone, as I said, is a loose cannon. He's even gone to an extent of saying that, you know, if you apply for a visa from whatever country, South Africa included, so they then check what you've been posting on social media. And if whatever you've been posting is read by them as negative, they deny you the visa.
The South African Farmers Development Agency says that the US imposed a 30% tariff increase on South African imports will cripple many farmers, especially in the cane growing industry in KwaZulu-Natal province. The agency's chairperson, Dr. Siyabonga Madlala.
Now, with Trump actually imposing these tariffs, we see this undermining the spirit of the AGOA, and we are losing what would have been a lucrative market we've been enjoying for years.
South Africa's Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Dean McPherson has directed the board of the Independent Development Trust to investigate all contracts issued during the suspended Chief Executive Officer Tebogo Malaka's reign. McPherson says he wants all others involved in corrupt activities to be exposed. He was briefing journalists in Cape Town after opening a criminal case against Malaka and her spokesperson, Pasha Magolane.
I briefed the board on my intended actions today and to understand what processes will unfold with regards to the disciplinary case against the suspended CEO.
The Zambian government has dismissed warnings by the U.S. Embassy of dangerous pollution in the Copperbelt mining region linked to a toxic spill earlier this year. On Wednesday, the embassy ordered its staff to leave the Kitwe area in the north of the country. The BBC Shingai Nyoka has the details.
Officials said today that there was no need to press the panic button, that constant monitoring and lab tests show that the pH levels of the water in Chimbashi, northern Zambia, have returned to normal and meet the World Health Organization standards.
China stocks climbed on track to close of the week at their highest level in 10 months as upbeat economic data lifted sentiment and investors largely looked past U.S. tariff concerns. Hong Kong shares declined on the day. China's blue chip CSI 300 index and the Shanghai Composite Index were up 1% each by the lunch break. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,527 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.39. Kenya, 128 shillings 6, and Zambia, 23.57. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5.45. Russia, 79 rubles 45. India, 87 rupees 56. China, 7 yuan 18. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 73 cents. 74 pence British pound, 85 euro, gold $3,388 and platinum $1,342 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $66.34 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC Sport, brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about South Africa's national rugby team Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting 13th of July, well, it started then at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. You can tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache, and the heroes that made rugby history. Stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere, no subscription needed. Don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
The South African Broadcasting Corporation is pleased to announce the launch of the new self-registration platform. Vendors wishing to do business with the SABC can self-register on our internally developed platform. Vendors are able to access this platform on our website, which is www.sabc.co.za/SABC. Under e-tenders, or self-register at etender.sabc.co.za and follow the prompts. Visit SABC social media pages for more details.
Annie Kalonji.
sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheki Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste. Et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. On a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheki?
Bon, je crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
So it is a Friday, and every week, this particular day, we bring you news in the space of arts and entertainment, also lifestyle. And our Channel Africa reporter, Ntantla Mahlangu, goes out and about and compiles for you what you need to know in terms of this sector. So let's take a listen at this week's RT Beats. That's what we call this segment.
Welcome to this week's African RT Beats exclusive to Channel Africa, The African Perspective. I'm Ntantla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, Africa's biggest art fair launches and the second annual Z Nation Fest is set to take place in Johannesburg, South Africa this weekend. Africa's leading and longest running contemporary art fair, FNB at Joburg, is set to return for the 18th consecutive year. Taking place at the Sandton Convention Center from the 5th to the 7th of September, the fair promises to immerse the city in the best of the continent's arts, artists, and galleries. More from FNB's brand experience lead in Nkosana Macheshana.
FNB Art Joburg is a contemporary art fair that celebrates South African artists and galleries. So it's really a platform for African artists, galleries, and even consumers to showcase the quality work we have within the African continent.
And why was it so important for the brand to be involved in the arts?
FNB, we well established within Africa as a whole, and we're deeply committed in the continent, in the communities we serve. So this particular opportunity gives us an opportunity again to demonstrate our commitment to our communities, but also to actually support the creative economy, which we all know is an economy with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of barriers to entry. So I think going back to our brand promise of help, when we step in and support the creative economy in this way, we really reduce some of those barriers for young artists to actually give themselves a chance within the industry, but also for the industry to remain sustainable.
Tato Toyeba, artist, lawyer, and social sciences researcher from Lesotho, will have her work showcased at the art fair. She won the 2025 FNB Art Prize. She says she's excited.
I'm super excited, as you can see. I've been smiling from ear to ear. It's such an honor. I'm very excited.
And Tato, what is it about your artwork do you think made you win?
I think it's new. I think people haven't really seen images arranged in this particular way. So I think it's kind of a new thing to the eye, and that's seductive, I think, yeah.
And how long have you been in the art industry for?
4 to 3 years. Yeah, I started in the pandemic, but my first show was in 2023. So I would say, yeah, from 2023 to now. Yeah.
And what sort of doors do you see opening up for you now that you've received this prize?
Well, I think I have now access to a wider audience of people, so I can connect further, which always means that I get to be introduced to broader perspectives. And so for me, it's kind of world expanding. And I'm not from Johannesburg, and this is like my introduction to like Johannesburg. I'm from Lesotho.
Tomorrow, the 9th of August, South Africa celebrates Women's Day, and one of the headline events is the second annual Z Nation Fest, curated by Ntombe Zinhle Giane, better known as DJ Zinhle. The award-winning DJ, producer, and businesswoman is using this platform to celebrate women through music, fashion, and wellness. The festival takes place at the Nazareth Expo Center in Johannesburg and brings together top talent from across the country. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange caught up with DJ Zintle ahead of the big day to find out what's in store.
Z Nation Fest 2025. What makes it different from last year's
year.
one?
I think we're trying to elevate ourselves every year, trying to bring something new that we didn't have the year before, trying to learn from the things that we felt were not good enough the year before. But the big thing this year again is experiences. We also just changed the lineup a little bit this year to bring artists that we didn't have last year. Java was a very big request from the besties, so we had to make sure that he's there. But I think just the experience of the festival, last year we had 5 themes, we've got 3 this year. We're just trying to switch it up and just bring new things. We didn't have a festival, now we have a festival. Now we do have a festival.
And the artists, let's talk about the artists, and also how do you go about choosing the artists and creatives that are featured at the fest?
If you think we are choosing the artists, you have not met the besties. The besties will tell us, okay, we didn't have Java, can we get Java? Can we get Makati? Can we get this person? So we are very big on customer responsiveness as a brand. We love listening to our crowd so that we can curate an experience that is specific to them. And some artists I definitely chose because I love them. Like I wanted Sbu Noah last year. Like this year, I said, guys, if you're not paying for Sbu Noah, I'm going to pay for it myself.
And will you be thinking about expanding to other cities?
Right now, absolutely not. I do feel like if people travel that far to go to Coachella, come on, travel to Joburg from Zimbabwe, from Botswana, from Namibia, from Spain, from wherever. Come to Joburg for this one-day experience and you will love it.
Let's talk about your involvement now in curating the whole festival experience. How involved are you?
Oh, I am the festival. The festival is me. You know what I mean? And I think you can even see it, you know, like it just feels like a Z Nation type of thing. Like I'm very specific about the details. I'm very specific about the experience. To make it easy for you, I'm a great host. Like if I have a party at my house and I invite you, you're gonna leave thinking, wow, what a great host, what a great experience. So I'm just taking that and blowing it up to a larger scale.
And how important is it to spotlight female talent at events like this?
It's important, I think, because of my experience as a female DJ in a male-dominated industry. I just understand the importance of pulling the girls up. Say, guys, this is our moment. Like, let's go, let's do this. And also to just showcase also to other girls that we as girls actually do support each other.
That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next Friday for Channel Africa, I am Ntlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Sudan is accusing the United Arab Emirates of sending foreign fighters to back the paramilitary rapid support forces in Darfur against the Sudanese armed forces. Abu Dhabi, though, have denied these claims, whilst Colombia has not issued a statement as yet. Naba Muhaddin reports from Sudan.
Sudan has accused the United Arab Emirates of backing the RSF and sending Colombian mercenaries to fight on its behalf in Darfur region, especially around Al-Fashir, which is the capital of North Darfur and the last stronghold for the army and allied groups. Al-Fashir has been under besieged since May 2024 as the RSF is trying to control it because it's the last capital that is not under control of the RSF in Darfur region. Fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces triggered on April 2023 and killed tens of thousands of people and displaced over 12 million and created the world's worst and largest scale humanitarian crisis. It's not the first time that Sudan is accusing United Arab Emirates of backing and fueling the fighting in Sudan. UAE has always denied all of the accusations, despite that Sudan has filed an official complaint in the United Nations Security Council. Some U.S. diplomats and UN experts verified that Colombian mercenaries contributed in the fighting and are training RSF. Some allied groups, Darfur allied groups, confirmed that at least 80 Colombian mercenaries were seen in and around Al-Fashir and are training RSF to use drone and artillery and are fighting with them. Colombia has officially apologized to the Sudanese government in December because of some of its citizens participated in the brutal fighting in Sudan. This is according to the Sudanese government. Last year, it's not the first time that UAE is accused by the Sudanese government, but of course, the two countries are escalating, diplomatically escalating, and Sudan has previously announced that it has boycotted UAE, but fighting continues in Sudan and impacting hundreds of thousands of people, especially in Al-Fashir, which is now under besiege by the RSF and is suffering from acute famine that is killing people every day there. Naba Muhiddin, Port Sudan, is Sudan.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África.
Ok.
Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, it's time to find out what's coming up with Benjamin and Palisa in Rise and Shine, and not Rise and Shine, On the Move, and On the Move on a Friday. What I know for sure is it's always lots of fun and there's always lots of music. So, Palisa, Benjamin, what is coming up on the Move?
Look, I feel like it's even more fun than usual today.
Yeah, you look the part, let me just say.
Yes, we dressed the role. You're going to find out the reason behind the attire that Ben and I went for today. But before that, in the first hour of the show, we'll be celebrating legendary guitarist, composer and author Billy Munama, who's in collaboration with Brand South Africa presenting the South African Music Legacy Masterclass. So we're going to chat about that in today's first hour. We move on into a second hour to speak about the African Film Finance Forum, which is something really important. I mean, African films are definitely making waves all across the world, and hopefully to grow, we need that funding. So we're going to find out a little bit more about this funding body. And then
it's going to be super fun, man. We're going to go on a Kwaito trip.
That's what I was thinking. That's the theme. When you guys walked in, I was like, oh, okay. I think I know what the theme will be.
Okay, fantastic. We're going to have a lovely visitor in studio. We're going to have Lenyora La Kwaito.
You guys are so lucky, man.
So Tebe is going to be coming in studio and we'll be hanging out, looking at 30 years of his career. He's still happening. I remember seeing him headlining an event not so long ago, like 4 years ago. And just the vibe changed. And it feels like Kwaito is still something that keeps remaining in our lives. lives to this day.
I was young when it all began. When Abo Arthur
Were
Mafogante
you a fan?
were leading the way. Of course, yes.
We need to see the dance before you leave the studio.
Yeah, I don't think it gets any better than him when you're talking Kwaito in terms of guests. He's the perfect one.
Absolutely. So we're going back in time into the Kwaito era in the final hour of the show. And of course, Ben and I have made sure to honor that Kwaito era by our outfits today.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Chuck Taylor.
Yes.
I'm actually looking at your shoes. I was trying to...
You know what? I didn't even clean them up, because a Chuck Taylor always looks best when it's not clean enough.
That's fantastic,
Yeah,
man.
so we're going to be having fun there.
No, we love the outfits. They're fantastic. Really cool, man.
You guys have such cool things to do.
I think
We
I
like
might
You guys can do cool things
You can
too.
stay with us, Asanda. Well, you're welcome. Chill with us.
I think I might shock a few people if they saw me. And I'm going to post a picture of me and Asanda, and you tell me if I should get a suit like hers, okay?
Yes.
All right.
That's how we end Africa Rise and Shine on this Friday, the 8th of August. Thank you so much for tuning in and staying with us. And do continue to stay with Channel Africa. As you know, On the Move is up next. My name is Asanda Beda.
And I'm Peter Ndoro. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. And if it's chilly like it is here in Johannesburg, stay warm wherever you are or keep hot. Have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see you Monday. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African Perspective. We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628.
Top stories this hour. Several members of Operation Dudula arrested, and U.S. Supreme Court asked to lift lower court order bearing racial profiling. Good morning, I am Nolutando Butelezi. Several members of South Africa's Operation Dudula have been arrested and are being held at Deep Kloof Police Station in Soweto. The nationwide Operation Dudula campaign bars undocumented foreign nationals from accessing services at public health facilities in the country. The campaign members were apprehended during an operation at a Johannesburg hospital. The group's actions have been criticized by government and other advocacy groups. Research has found that illegal foreign nationals amount to 70% of patients at public health facilities. President of Operation Dudula, Zandile Tabula, says that police service has not formally charged their members.
We've been battling to get the charges because they kept changing. I mean, the SAPS is still trying to cook what the charges can be because firstly they were accused of impersonating as immigration officers and SAPS, but then when we've made them aware that if one impersonates, they're probably carrying a card as identification of they are from the Home Affairs or rather wearing the uniform of the SAPS or DHA. And that's when the charges now changed to being trespassing and public violence.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has held a telephone call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin on the crisis in Ukraine. Yesterday's discussion followed Putin's request to brief Ramaphosa on the peace process and to engage on issues of bilateral interest. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
President Putin expressed his recognition and appreciation for South Africa's involvement in advancing a peace process between Russia and Ukraine. President Ramaphosa welcomed the briefing and expressed South Africa's full support to peace initiatives that will end the war and contribute to a lasting peace between Russia and Ukraine.
Officials in Ghana have launched an investigation into a military helicopter crash that killed the country's defense and environment ministers, as well as 6 other people on Wednesday. The Z-9 helicopter, carrying 3 crew and 5 passengers, came down in a dense forest as it was flying from the capital, Accra, to the town of Abuasi for an event to tackle illegal mining. In a TV address, President John Mahama said a task force had been set up to find out what happened.
I want to assure the families and the nation that the Ghana Armed Forces has initiated a full and transparent investigation into the circumstances of this crash. An investigative board of inquiry has been set up to investigate the cause of the crash. The flight data and cockpit voice recorders have both been retrieved.
The United Nations Human Rights has condemned the escalation in deadly attacks by the Rwandan-backed M23 and other armed groups against civilians in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo over the past month. This comes despite the DRC government and the M23 group signing a declaration of principles in Qatar this July that agreed to a ceasefire and to further negotiations towards a comprehensive agreement. This was preceded by the signing of a peace agreement in Washington, D.C. between DRC and Rwanda in June. The Human Rights Office has called on the signatories of both agreements to ensure real progress for civilians in the DRC. President Donald Trump's administration has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to lift a lower court order that barred U.S. government agents from making immigration-related arrests in Los Angeles based on tactics that critics have called racial profiling. In an emergency filing, the Justice Department asked the High Court to halt a judge's order that temporarily blocked agents from stopping or detaining people without reasonable suspicion that they are in the country illegally. By relying solely on their race or ethnicity, or if they speak Spanish or English with an accent, the judge's order applied to her court's jurisdiction over much southern California. To recap the top story, several members of South Africa's Operation Dudula have been arrested and are being held at the Deep Kloof police station in Soweto. The nationwide Operation Dudula campaign bars undocumented foreign nationals from accessing services at public health facilities. For any news stories that you would like to share with us, you can send them at newsroom at channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Good morning Africa, and happy Friday. It's 6 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. Thank you to Nolutando Butelezi, who kickstarted our 9 a.m. news bulletin, and a huge thank you already to our news team for the day, who's going to keep us informed throughout the show. Thank you to Ndoro and Asanda Beda. They started our morning here on Channel Africa with Africa Rise and Shine, but we keep things moving. This is On the Move with myself, Palesa Tau, and Benjamin Moshata. I will be with you for the next 3 hours.
Hey man, we're going to have a quite a Friday today. Yes. It's a way of us celebrating a legend. I think it's okay to call him a legend now. It's 30 years 100%. Into his career, and one of the pioneers of a very big genre that we celebrate, not just here in South Africa, but in different parts of the continent. We're going to have Vatebe joining us in studio in the final hour of the show. So we are all dressed up. I've got my Chuck Taylors. Palisa has her overall and her bucket hat. So yeah, we're about to dance in a few minutes time.
We're definitely going to be having a great time, but it's nothing without you. So come on, join the ride at Channel Africa 1. That's on our social media platforms. But to tap in the first place, find us on channelafrica.co.za, on our audio bouquets at DSTV channel 802 and OpenView HD channel 628, and of course the SABC Plus app.
Yeah, well, we're going to start the show with hang out with guitarist, composer, author, and music researcher Billy Monama. And Billy's a very interesting one. It's one that you can call him a musicologist, not just a music guy who just composes music, but tells multiple